Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here for this evening. We are commencing with our Committee of Adjustment meeting, and then we'll transition into our council meeting. Before I begin, our very friendly comm staff has asked that I highlight a few things. First of all, I'd like to thank members of our municipal team for organizing the indoor eclipse viewing event on Monday. For those of you, whether you were indoors or outdoors, it was certainly a sight to behold. So I hope some of you caught the view or the experience one way or another. And thank you again to our municipal staff for convening an indoor event in this very space where the eclipse was live streamed. We also just wanted to highlight that this past weekend was Maple Weekend. It's an Ontario-wide event presented by the Ontario Maple Syrup Producers Association. As some of you will know, and I think I caught a few of my council colleagues there, there was a festival at our lovely Kemptville campus, Agroforestry Centre, and in partnership with the campus, the Kemptville Rotary Club and the Kemptville Youth Centre, many hundreds of pancakes were served, and there was music and trail tours and many other things. So we're very appreciative to the leadership demonstrated by Karen Bedard in particular and the Kemptville campus for bringing it together and for all the volunteers that made it such a success. I was able to drop by and have a pancake, and it was absolutely delicious. Also next week, from April 15th to April 21st, is National Volunteers Week. As you know, here in North Grenville, volunteers keep this community going in so many different ways. So we are currently at the municipality issuing a call to local organizations to participate in the development of an online hub. That hub will be a centralized platform connecting volunteers with organizations in need of support. What we have found over the years is some of our best volunteers tend to be on the older side. They have a little more time, a little more energy to give back if they're not in those busy years of parenting or even grandparenting. So we know that as heavily relied upon as those volunteers are, we want to welcome younger residents into the community to also step up and volunteer. I know through my children's hockey, you can see that volunteerism on full display with so many people keeping our local recreational clubs going. So there's lots of ways to contribute in the community. And during Volunteer Week, we will really do our best to highlight the many opportunities and some of the outstanding volunteers that make North Grenville such a great place to be. Two other things very quickly. County Road 43, as some of you know, and I know council colleagues, you're well aware of this, as is our municipal staff, particularly Mr. Finley. County Road 43 expansion is underway. It was about a decade in the making, if not a little bit longer, but we're finally here. It's a multi-year expansion and bridge replacement project. And if you have any interest in learning more and hearing from the project management team, as well as our own public works staff and county public works staff, we invite you to come back here on Monday, April 15th from 6 to 8:30 and get a much better sense of the timeline for the project. We've been fielding all kinds of questions around construction and ensuring that businesses don't experience any disruptions. County Road 43 will never be closed, but there will be obviously some inconveniences as the expansion is underway. So feel free to come out next Monday, and we'll also live stream the first half of the meeting where there will be presentations. And finally, our rec staff wanted me to remind council and staff and anyone here tonight that the Grenville Gremlins Square Dancing Group is celebrating their 50th anniversary, which is pretty impressive. On this forthcoming weekend, the Little Mermaid, the Kemptville Youth Musical Theatre, premieres its show of Little Mermaid. That's running from April 13th to 28th. Tickets for the premiere are already sold out, which just goes to show how popular and high caliber these performances are, and they have a great reputation. But there are tickets for many other nights, so we encourage you to come out. And in closing, I will say that there is a comedy night in support of the Kemptville Jags football team. It's happening on Saturday, April 13th at Catered Affairs. If you go to their Facebook page or website, you can buy a ticket. So that's a lot that's happening in our community. But now I'll ask a council colleague to read our land acknowledgement before we proceed with her committee of adjustment. Council colleague, Councillor Sullivan, go ahead.
The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the land territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous-informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Sullivan. So now we're moving to the approval of minutes, colleagues. We're at the Committee of Adjustment meeting stage of our meeting. So we have one set of minutes for approval this evening. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the approval of minutes for Committee of Adjustment, please. Councillor Wilson, Councillor Sullivan, thank you very much. Any questions or concerns in regards to the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. That carries. Disclosures of interest, council colleagues, this is in regards to any perceived or real financial benefit or loss arising from tonight's meeting. Any disclosures? Seeing none? Great. Then we'll move to our public hearing. We have two for tonight. The first one is Royal Landing Gate. So I'm going to proceed to read the legally mandated text for our public hearings. So you may hear this more than once this evening, but we're going to start with 4.1 A0124 for 102 Royal Landing Gate. The Committee of Adjustment will now hold a public hearing to consider application number A0124 for Mr. Don Emarkoon and Ashnani Dinyapitia on lands located at 102 Royal Landing Gate. Lots 81 and 119 of Plan 15M4, Geographic Township of Oxford-on-Rideau, now the Municipality of North Grenville, to decrease the exterior yard setback to permit a covered entrance over a set of exterior stairs, which requires an increase in the projection length. I must advise you that this meeting is your opportunity to voice any objections or concerns you may have. If an appellant does not provide oral submissions at this meeting or written submissions before a committee makes a decision, the Ontario Land Tribunal may not consider their objections. Debbie Wood, who's here with us this evening, Secretary-Treasurer, will keep a record summary of the meeting. Are there people here for the matter of 102 Royal Landing Gate? Is the applicant here? Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome. Okay, so with that, I'll pass it over to Mr. Mosher, and he will be giving us an update on the application. Thank you, Mr. Mosher.
Thank you, Your Worship. If we could go to the next slide, please. So just a bit of history for this application. Our office had received a building permit application for an exterior staircase on September 22nd, 2023. During the initial review, the structure was determined to be in compliance with the zone bylaw, but during the review of this variance application, it was found that it's actually a little bit longer than the permitted projections. And during a building inspection, additional features were included that had not formed part of the original permit application, most notably a roofed portion of the staircase. So building division staff have referred the matter to the planning division, and they're seeking a retroactive minor variance to continue on with construction. If we could go to the, back up. Yes, thank you. So the specific relief would be from sections 13.41 and section 650 of the zoning bylaw, and it would allow the step to be a little bit longer and a roofed portion over the stair. If we could go to the next slide, please. This is where the property is located, Royal Landing Gate. It's a corner lot within the Equinel subdivision. Just off of County Road 44. Next slide, please. This is a site plan, and if we go just to the very next slide, it shows in detail where the location of the stair is. You can see from this that it's about 3.2 meters almost. So staff's saying for a rounding error, let's make it 3.1. That's in proximity to the exterior side yard. And then again, the length here is about 4 meters, so just slightly longer than is permitted. Next slide, please. This shows it, the submission that we received in terms of the support for this application. This is the portion that is considered, the roofed portion is considered to be a part of the structure itself. Any part of the structure has to meet the exterior side yard of 4.5 meters. This is projecting into that side yard. Therefore, the variance was triggered. Again, you see the length of the stairs. They're just slightly longer than would be permitted. Next slide, please. So it would comply with all other zone standards, and construction is not proposed to occur in any easement. If we can go to the next slide. We did receive comments as part of this. Now, when the slide deck was prepared, these are all the comments we received. We received an additional one. I'll note that shortly. So again, of course, a comment from the building division that there was a requirement to re-obtain the building permit following any decision of the variance. A note from Bylaw Services that there appeared to be an illegal second driveway on Bonnie Lee Crescent, which would need to be removed and reinstated. So that's been conveyed to the applicants. We also received a letter of no comment from Public Works and a letter of no comment from Emergency and Protective Services. Next slide, please. The one comment that we received from a member of the public today was about that driveway. And so I responded in writing just to that individual, just to say it's our understanding that steps are being taken to reinstate that. So it's staff's recommendation to support this application. This application is minor in nature. The intent of the comprehensive zoning bylaw, other than the two special areas, is being met. And this is in a residential area of North Grenville. And so the intent of the official plan is being respected, and it represents good land use planning. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
So, council colleagues, any questions in regards to the minor variance? Seeing none. Oh, I apologize, Councillor Sullivan, I did not see your hand.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Mr. Mosher. Is this by any chance to facilitate a secondary residence in the basement, secondary apartment?
Through your worship, well, I've had some conversations with the applicant, and that may be a desire in future. It's not been communicated that that's immediately desired, but yes, it would certainly be able to facilitate that. Okay,
thank you.
Anything else, council colleagues? Scanning. Okay. Great, thank you. Does the applicant wish to speak? You're okay? You're satisfied with the presentation? Okay. So if there's nothing supplementary, I'll just ask, not seeing that there were any members of the public for this particular matter, I just want to reconfirm that there's no one else wishing to speak in regards to this application. Seeing no hands, then I'm going to close the meeting, and we will now move to consider the recommendation, and that is that we grant relief for the properties located at 102 Royal Landing Gate, former township of Oxford and Rideau, now the municipality of North Grenville, from the following sections of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 5012, to provide relief from section 13.4.1 S3 to decrease the exterior side yard setback requirement from 4.5 meters to 3.1 meters to allow a covered entrance as an addition to the principal residence, and to provide relief from section 6.5.0A to allow an exterior stair projection to extend along a 4.5 meter length, whereas the standard only permits a 3 meter projection length. Because the request is minor, the intent of the comprehensive zoning bylaw and official plan are being maintained, and the increased lot coverage is desirable and appropriate in the residential designation. So I'll look for a council colleague to move or second the adoption. Thank you, Council Barkley, Council Strachan. I'll look to council colleagues for any last questions or concerns. Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor, please. Good. Thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate it. Thank you. So we'll now move on to A0324 for Hunter Lane. The Committee of Adjustment will now hold a public hearing to consider application number A0324 for Clayton Jones on behalf of 2250 366 Ontario Inc. on lands located at Hunter Lane, Lot 10, Concession 9, Geographic Township of Oxford and Rideau, now the Municipality of North Grenville, to permit the construction of a single detached dwelling on a private road. I must advise that this hearing is your opportunity to voice any objections to concerns you may have. If an appellant does not provide oral submissions at this meeting or written submissions before the committee makes a decision, the Ontario Land Tribunal may refuse to consider any objections. Debbie Wood, of course, is here again to keep a record summary of the meeting. Are there people here for this public hearing? Is the applicant in the room? Let's see the applicant tonight. Okay, so I'll hand it over to Mr. Mosher. He'll present this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. We can go to the next slide, please. So this application, again, is to seek relief to allow construction of a single detached dwelling with frontage on a private road. So North Grenville's zoning bylaw and many others are structured in such a way that you are not permitted to obtain a building permit for a dwelling on a private road unless there's some sort of mechanism or agreement that's entered into. So during pre-consultation pre-consultation discussions with the applicant, it was noted that they would not be able to obtain a permit with the bylaw being the way it is now. The zoning bylaw in this regard is a little bit, it's got some sections that speak for it as long as there's agreements, and it's got some sections that say it's an outright prohibition. Where that's the case, we look to the official plan. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. If the committee decides to approve this decision tonight, a condition of the decision should be to require that the owner and any future owners enter into an agreement for the lands, and that agreement would specify that there's no municipal service of the private road, there's no municipal obligation or garbage collection, road maintenance, any expectation of that kind, and that any liability is assumed by the owner and future owners for access to and construction of that road. So when we look at a minor variance, we have to consider 4 tests. This application, while in staff's opinion it is minor in nature, while it is generally in keeping with the zoning bylaw, there's a statement in our official plan, which is section 12.1, and it says, it's a shall statement, and it says that any development must occur on an open and improved road allowance that's part of a municipal system. So despite this shortcoming, staff do believe there's a way forward for the development with such an agreement that would be put in place. We can go to the next slide, please. So this is the subject property. I apologize. It's highlighted in blue kind of to the bottom of the image. It's got access, if you see the word Hunter Lane there, and you kind of follow that up, it hooks to the left, and it's like an L that connects up to County Road 20. Now, I wanted to show this image because it's showing all the different land use classifications that are present. You see the blue line, which shows watercourses and the associated floodplain with that. You see along the river, there's this sort of like bushy hatching and the setback, the 120-meter setback from that. That's not a subject of this application. And then you see the kind of gravelly-looking portion on the property itself, and that's there's about 10 acres that's rural, just in the grayish area, and the rest is mineral aggregate or provincially significant wetlands to the south. I wanted to show this image because the road itself, it starts to be a private road where there's Render Road, and then when it comes down to Hunter Lane, there's already, I believe it's 4 dwellings that are located on this road, some of them with agreements for service and maintenance, and some of them with no agreements and no understanding. So it's a bit of a legacy road. If a dwelling's constructed at this property, it's the second to last dwelling on this road. And the applicant, I know he's not here tonight, but he indicated the willingness to continue to maintain that road, and he's looking for more individuals who could contribute to its maintenance and cost. I think the only other thing to note from this slide is that we're concerned with safe access when development would be accessing a property through a floodplain, but we did receive comments from the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority that this property would have safe access. That is, the depth of flooding on County Road 20 in a 1 in 100-year flood event is not expected to exceed 1 foot, and that's the standard they currently use. We can go to the next slide, please. So again, as stated, if the committee approves this, an agreement for construction of the road, its maintenance, its rights, its responsibilities, obligations of the property, and the future owner would need to be registered on title. The committee does have the power to include that as a condition of decision if they choose to approve this development. The construction would be able to comply with all other zone standards. Of note, while there is provincially significant wetland to the south and mineral aggregate reserve, those are not, only the wetland presently has a zoning designation. The mineral aggregate portion does not. So while the applicant could build on the mineral aggregate portion, the hydro costs would probably be prohibitive, and everything they've indicated to us is that they would seek to build on the northern 10 acres, which is rural. Next slide, please. So again, we received a letter of no objection from the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority Septic Office, an email of no objection that, yes, there is safe access from the regular permitting office. We received a note from the building division to obtain a civic address following any decision of the committee. We received an email of no comment from Bylaw Services, an email from Public Works indicating that a road agreement understanding that there is no municipal services to the lot is required, and an email from Emergency and Protective Services to note that the private roadway will need to support fire vehicles. Next slide, please. So staff do recommend approval of it with the condition requiring an agreement, the text of the agreement to be worked out with our legal counsel. The requested variance is minor. It's generally good land use planning. It's meeting the intent of the comprehensive zoning bylaw, and it's generally maintaining the official plan. It's not categorically because of that section 12.1. But even still, with an agreement, staff's comfortable to recommend approval. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Council colleagues, any questions for Mr. Mosher? Council Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To Deputy Director Mosher, are there any other private roadways in North Grenville that would be similar to this? And are things working out okay in those situations? Is there any issues?
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Through you, Your Worship. Yeah, there are many older private roads. You think of cottage country, like McGahey Lane, Lannon Lane, Hilly Lane, these ones, Rideau Glen. So there's lots of kind of legacy lanes like this where many dwellings exist today. And we often receive applications for people to reconstruct dwellings after a fire or some other event. Typically they require a variance because they're making some change, and they're generally permitted to reconstruct those dwellings. The only difference or change here is that this is a lot that's not yet been built upon. So,
okay, thank you very much.
Anything else, colleagues, in regards to the application? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Deputy Director Mosher. What exactly is going to be registered on title? Could you just refresh me on that?
through you, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, it would be an agreement that specifies that the road is not owned or maintained or operated by the municipality, that it's the responsibility of the individual owner himself. It would specify their rights, their obligations, and their responsibilities. It would include wording such as you will not have garbage service or any other kinds of services like that to the subject property, things of that nature.
Would it also include the specifications from the fire department in terms of access?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think this time of year we often hear from some private roads or residents who live on private roads in regards to a want for further maintenance, but obviously the condition here, because I guess of the size of the road or the just existing condition of the road, is that the municipality is not in a position to maintain, upgrade, invest in the road over time. Is that the assessment by the municipality in terms of that distinction between private and public roads?
Good question, Your Worship. I may rely on the Director
Finley?
of Public Works. I'll give it a try, and he can correct anything I get wrong. But it's odd. The file for this, it's like it goes back to the 1980s. There was a forced road that occurred. So forced roads, they don't occur on the traditional layout of road network that's set out by surveyors. And then for some reason, it was never assumed into the municipal road system. And that does become a question of, finances and maintenance and cost. I don't know the specific history of why this was never picked up, but it has not been. So I'm not sure if the Director of Public Works wants to add anything.
Mr. Finley?
Thank you. Through Your Worship, I think Deputy Director Moser pretty well summarized it. It is a matter of financial constraints in terms of requiring the road to be up to municipal standards. Typically, these private lanes don't meet our standards for continued maintenance, so there'd be a cost there. And again, the municipality would have to consider the ongoing costs, because once it is assumed by us, then we do have a duty through our minimum maintenance standards to maintain that road up to our standards. So the roads that have remained private, as long as they can be maintained through the residents, it's a financial a burden for us to take that on. So that would be a council decision at a certain request, and there are thresholds that would have to be met to bring that to a municipal standard, such as proper turnarounds and again for emergency services, items like that.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Strachan?
Thank you, through Madam Mayor, and for my council colleagues. I think you're all aware of what road I live on. Not going to divulge my address, but it is a private road, and there are many houses on that road. So as far as the feasibility of being able to live on and maintain a road like that, the biggest biggest issue is you have to get along with all your neighbors because you all rely on each other when it comes to snow clearing. And when you have an ice storm and all the trees fall down on your road, everybody comes out and pitches in, which people do in this community anyway, but particularly of concern when it's your main access to other roads. So I just, from my own personal experience, it is absolutely fine to live on one of these roads. It just has extra considerations when it comes to the items that Mr. Mosier has mentioned.
Great, thanks. So council, if there's no other hands and we don't see the applicant here, and I'll just scan the audience, is there any member of the public wishing to speak to this application? If there isn't, then I'll close the meeting and we will proceed to the recommendation. And I think Mr. Mosher, the recommendation currently states, so this is for council's consideration, that the Committee of Adjustment grant relief from the property located at Part Lot 10, Concession 9, Hunter Lane, former Township of Oxford and Rideau, now the Municipality of North Grenville, from the following section of Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 5012, to provide relief from Section 6.14 of Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 5012, to permit the construction of a single detached dwelling on a private road. I also heard, Mr. Mosher, you said several times that in the recommendation or the motion moved or considered by council, we should also state that a condition of the decision should be to require that the owner and future owners of the subject lands enter into an agreement with the municipality to ensure that there is no municipal service of the private road and to ensure any liability is assumed by the owners or future owners. So I think that captures, Mr. Marshall, what you're recommending? Okay, so I'll look for a mover and a seconder, colleagues. Mover and a seconder. Councilor Strachan. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Any comments on the motion? Not seeing any. Oh, Councilor Strachan, go ahead.
I do have one follow-up question because I can't remember how things played out when we purchased our home, but do those agreements stay effectively with the title of the property when it changes ownerships to make sure that that is effectively communicated to future owners?
Through your worship, yes, it'd be registered on title. So it's this owner, the next owner as well.
Perfect, thank you.
Good question. Anything else? Seeing nothing, I'm going to call the question. All in favor, please raise your hands. All right. That carries. So with that, we're at the end of our Committee of Adjustment public hearings, and I think we're looking for adjournment, Ms. Wood? Okay. So with that, I will look for a mover and a seconder to adjourn our Committee of Adjustment meeting at 7:01 p.m. So if I can have a mover and a seconder, Councilor Wilson, Councilor Sullivan, thank you. And I'll call the question on adjournment. All in favor? Good. Thank you. So that concludes our Committee of Adjustment meeting. We're going to shift over into council. We just need, do we need to technically change links? We're good to go? No. Okay. So let's carry on, council colleagues, to our next items. But we are going to do these next applications under the auspices of a council meeting, not a Committee of Adjustment meeting, because the former matters qualified for Committee of Adjustment. The two other applications do not. So we've read our land acknowledgement, but I do believe we need to approve the agenda for our council meeting this evening. And I'll look for a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda for our council meeting. Deputy Mayor, Councilor Sullivan, thank you very much. The items for consideration on our council agenda this evening are before you. If I see no questions or concerns, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Good. Okay. So now we're in our council meeting, and with that, we will look for any disclosures of interest. Council colleagues, any disclosures of interest in regards to items arising on the agenda this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on. We do not have any presentations or delegations this evening. We don't have anything under consent this evening, Ms. President? Okay, good. And then under client services, corporate services, emergency and protective services, finance, parks, rec, and culture, we have nothing this evening, which brings us straight to planning and development. So our first application this evening is for River Road, and I will read my mandated script. I just have to pull it out of my documents right here. Good, thank you. Public meeting. Excellent. So, council will now hold a public meeting to consider an application for lands located on a part of 2180 River Road, part of Lot 21, Concession 1, former Township of Oxford and Rideau, now the Municipality of North Grenville, from agricultural A1 to special agricultural kennel, SAK-4, to permit a kennel including boarding. I must advise you that this meeting is your opportunity to voice any objections or concerns you may have with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. If an appellant does not provide oral submissions at this public meeting or written submissions before council adopts the proposed amendment, the Ontario Land Tribunal may refuse to consider objections. Any persons who wish further notice of council's decision can give their name and address to our planners with us this evening. Is anyone here for this public meeting? Great. And are any one of you the applicant, or are you here as members of the public? You are the applicants. Okay, great. Any others here for the public meeting? Not seeing anything? All right, I'll pass this file over to Director Amy Martin. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll just advance to the next slide, please. So some background information on the property. The property is currently zoned agriculture, rural, and floodplain. The official plan designation of the property is agriculture, floodplain, and mineral aggregate resource. The property is approximately 70 acres in size and is currently being used for agricultural purposes and residential purposes. The proposal would be to utilize an existing equestrian barn on the property and convert it over to a kennel use. We'll go to the next slide. So the property is located just west of the Settlers Grant subdivision on River Road. As you can see from the mapping, there is some floodplain that runs through the front portion of the property. The proposed, if we go to the next slide, I think I have a picture later of where the everything's situated. So the intent would be to rezone the property to allow for the kennel use. It would be outside of the floodplain use, and in a subsequent photo, you will see that the equestrian structure is actually located quite significantly away from the road and the property lines associated with the property, given that it is a 70-acre parcel. So when reviewing zoning bylaw amendment applications, we look to our policy considerations, starting with the provincial policy statement. So staff did a review of the policies in the provincial policy statements, and we've just highlighted a few that staff were confident the proposed application meets the intent of the policy statement, including the fact that healthy, integrated, and viable rural areas should be supported by building upon rural character and leveraging rural amenities and assets, as well as promoting the diversification of the economic base through goods and services, as well as our agricultural land use policies calls for the long-term protection of our primary agricultural areas. So in this case, the applicant is proposing to utilize an existing equestrian barn and not taking any additional lands out of active production. Next slide, please. So under the provincial policy statement, we have the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville's official plan, which provides planning policy at a regional level. Similar to the provincial policy statement, you'll find that many of the policies are the same, and staff in their analysis determined that the proposed zoning amendment meets the intent of the United Counties official plan. This includes policies related to on-farm diversified uses that do not hinder the surrounding agricultural area. Next slide. In regards to the North Grenville official plan, which provides policy direction at our local level, our policies speak to agriculture-related development is to be located in areas where land is marginal or has a lesser capability of being used for agricultural purposes. And this looks at the establishment of on-farm diversified uses, which also includes kennels. So our official plan does recognize a kennel as a permitted use as an on-farm diversified use in the agricultural area. We'll go to the next slide. Staff performed an analysis of the special agricultural kennel zoning zone and the minimum setback requirements. As you can see, the property is quite large, being 70 acres, and the equestrian structure is located quite far back off the road. In fact, it is approximately 300 meters plus from any residence in any direction. So the intent would be to convert a portion of, or all of the building or parts of, into a kennel, as demonstrated on the site plan provided by the applicants. And then the green arrows just indicate what the minimum 30-meter setback as required by the zoning bylaw would represent. We'll go to the next slide. So at the time of report submission, we had just received one phone call inquiring about the proposed kennel use, providing their support to the project. Since then, we've received 4 different property owners within the area that reached out to the municipality asking a variety of questions. Although none had provided a formal objection, they wanted to inquire with the municipality in regards to the kennel. So we received questions from Mr. Gauthier asking about the maximum number of dogs that would be allowed at the property at any given time. He asked and inquired about a 30-meter buffer versus a 300-meter buffer, raised potential for noise concerns, asking questions in regards to if this would be an animal rescue, where would the kennels be located, indoors or outdoors, hours of operation, and would there be the use of firearms for training of dogs, and what the municipality's provisions would be for that. We received an email or a phone call from a Mr. Carver asking if it was possible to limit the operation of the kennel just to the existing buildings, and inquired about potential future expansion plans. We received an inquiry from a Mr. McClellan, who requested that the zoning be limited to the southern portion of the property, so being more reflective of where the setback is, where the existing barn is, and heading south. That would leave the area between the barn and to the north towards River Road in an agricultural zone, and not take it out of, and leave that as agricultural, and having the zoning for the kennel further south. Questions were asked as well as about sound attenuation measures. We also received an email from Mr. Carty inquiring about the size and scope of the operation, the number of dogs that may be housed in the kennels at one time, hours of operation, and just concerns in general about noise. What I want to add for council is that the applicant has been very responsive to the inquiries from the residents, and over the last 48 hours in regards to the question about doing more of a spot zoning on the property and just limiting the extent of the special agricultural kennel zone. The applicant is agreeable to reflect that request, and staff have prepared a bylaw for council's consideration. If we just go back to the site plan, Chloe, we'll go back one. Site plan. Yeah, thank you. So essentially the line for where the special agricultural kennel would begin would be just in front of the barn and would go back to the south. The residents within the area have asked if the applicants could consider putting the outdoor kennels on the south side of the barn, again, just trying to create some compatibility and pushing the noise further south on the property. So the proposed bylaw that staff has prepared will reflect just that more spot zoning, keeping it centered around the agricultural structure, the equestrian barn. If we just advance the slides, next slide. We received no agency comments at the time the report was submitted. And the next slide. So staff recommend that council approve and enact a bylaw to amend the zoning for 2180 River Road from rural to special agriculture kennel to permit the establishment of a kennel business on the property.
Okay, great. Thank you, Amy. Questions, council colleagues, for Amy in regards to this particular application? Not seeing anything. Any further comments from the applicant? Oh, I apologize, Councillor Sullivan. I think we're going to have to adjust our sight lines because I'm not seeing your hand.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Director Martin. So this bylaw here, the recommendation, the bylaw will be reworded or amended to include the stipulation that the outdoor kennels be on the south side of the building. Is that correct? Is that what you said?
So the zoning would just be to the it would be just to the north part of the barn and going back south. Site plan control is required for kennels, so that would be addressed. The location of outdoor runs would be addressed through the site plan control process.
Okay, thank you. So this can stay as it is then? The recommendation?
Yes.
Stays the way it, okay, thank you.
Good. Just scanning for hands, council colleagues, seeing nothing. Is there any further comment from the applicant? You're good? Okay, sure. Okay, thank you. So nothing from the applicant at this time. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. All right, and I do not believe we have any members of the public here wishing to speak. Is that right? Oh, we do. Okay. I'm so sorry. If you wish to intervene, you must come to the mic. That is really unfortunate because we've just spent a lot of time upgrading our sound system. Is this any better? Okay. Okay. I just, if you wish to ask a question, you have to come to the mic. The mic is, you have to come down and address the the council right there. I apologize. And I have assumed our sound system was sufficiently of high quality, so I wouldn't need to project too much, but maybe that was a mistake on my part. So I'll do a better job of amplifying my voice so that I can be heard. Yep, I think you just press the button. It's the little person and it'll go red. Yeah, if you ask your question, I'll repeat it. Yeah.
Basically, after you approve this,
Yes,
before you go any further, that has to go to a site plan, right?
correct.
That's where you address the issues of the size of the kennels and how far they are, whether it's adjournment, structure.
Yes, I'll defer that to Ms. Martin in terms of how the site plan process would address those details. So Ms. Martin, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the site plan control process would address matters of parking facilities around the facility, location of the outdoor runs and fencing. It could go as far as indicating heights of fences. What I do want to say is we do have a separate bylaw that regulates kennels. We do have an animal care and control bylaw, and the municipality, through our bylaw division, inspects kennels on an annual basis. So it could potentially bring in those provisions as well. Are you referring to the animal care and control bylaw and our kennel provisions?
Do you have something in writing that says kennels should have outdoor runs that are a certain size, with a certain structure? Is there any bylaw on that, or is that from the site plan?
So again, I'm just going to repeat the question for the public record, and the question is, where do certain elements of the kennel get regulated? Is it through the site plan or is it the bylaw?
So we would regulate that more through the site plan process than we would. Okay, so site plan documents, when they're submitted, are quasi-public documents. There is no requirement under site plan control for a public meeting, but they are public documents that are subject to public disclosure. There are no, through your worship, there are no.
Okay.
Sir,
And could we
sir.
just get your name and address for the public record? Carl Carver. Okay, Earl Carver, thank you. Okay. So Earl has stated his. Okay. And Ms. Martin, do you have further comment on how we manage the site plan process? Mr. Mosher?
Thank you, Your Worship. I did speak with Mr. Carver on the phone today. And so, Mr. Carver, I'm Phil Mosher, and I'm sorry if there was a misunderstanding. This is the public meeting for this. And I think what I had indicated is that from this, there will be matters and measures that inform the site plan control, such as fencing, location of runs, all of those things that we discussed on the phone today. And while that is not a public process, the public does have limited amount of access and input into it. As Ms. Martin said, there's no meeting for it, though. If you wish to see any plans that are prepared and submitted, those can be provided to you. They are public documents, and they will be as part of that process. There's no objection to a site plan.
Okay, and we have that as part of the public record, so thank you certainly for your comments. Any other comments in regards to this matter? All right, Councilor Strachan.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Director of Planning. So as we've been talking about the location of the runs and the zoning changes and all these things that will come up in site plan control, My understanding is at this stage, those are agreed to in principle by the applicant, based on your conversations with him, that he is amenable to most of the recommendations or suggestions that have come from the neighbors. Is that correct?
That is correct, and the applicants are in the room if they do wish to speak to that.
So, through you, Madam Mayor, I would ask maybe if the applicant wants to speak to these things to be able to state those for the record. I think that might go a long way to appeasing some of the concerns of your neighbors, if that's acceptable.
Oh, you do have to use the mic. Is our mic working now? Oh, just so if you, unfortunately there is a formal process. I know it would be potentially easier to address the audience, but you have to use the mic. And if you could just, for the record, of course, state your name and address, please. And your mic is not working, Chloe?
No, you just push the person.
Just, there you go. You're good to go.
We're good now? Okay. So I'm Troy Sakeley, we're the applicant. My partner Justin Richard is here for 2180 River Road. And so I understand, so can I address Mr. Carver's particular?
Absolutely.
So,
Yes, you can speak to any aspect of the application.
So if he would like to tell me what it is that's bothering him about the application, we could address those specific issues. Because we are doing this for the community. It's not just for ourselves and for all the dog owners that are in Kemptville. And so we want to build this structure and run it in a way that's going to be amiable for all the residents. So my first initial thought was that there would be some noise complaints, some noise issues. Other than that, I really don't know, other than dogs getting loose, what the concerns would be. But I'd like to hear them from you, sir, so we can address them.
Just read my letter that I sent to the
Okay.
city of North Granville, Mr. Moser, and I discussed it today. He said he was in touch with you.
So, Mr. Mosher, are you able to share the letter from Mr. Carver? Is that?
I can go grab a copy of it right now if needed. We received a paper copy in the mail, and I have a copy of it at my desk. If you want, I can go grab it.
So that's something that you can share with the applicant. Are there key highlights that you would just like to emphasize in terms of what Mr. Carver was identifying?
They're just consistent with what Director Martin had mentioned in terms of other concerns that were raised.
Okay. And that would be fencing, noise attenuation. Ms. Martin, what were the other areas where some members of the public requested consideration or concern? Ah, Mr. Carver has brought a copy of the letter. All right. Maybe that will.
First line says I'm not opposed to the kennel. Okay. And then I think these are fairly reasonable things.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I live across the road from the property. Okay, I did not know that. I'm not necessarily opposed to the change as long as it has no impact on me, i.e. noise from dogs and increased traffic. I think it reasonable that the location of the dogs be limited to 30 feet from the existing buildings. Just to address that, Mr. Carver, we are planning on putting the dog runs right alongside the buildings that are there. They're not going to be anywhere else on the property. The outdoor dogs runs must be at the back of the existing building, which is where we had planned to put them, to mitigate noise and the safety of the animals. I think that the number of dogs should be limited to a reasonable number, as is a very large facility. I would also like to know that what kind of kennel it's going to be, and the operations may be anticipated other than boarding. So if you look at the site plan, we have a large racetrack that's there that was there for the horses before. And so we want to use that as a on-leash only dog park, where not only our staff, but also members of the facility, clients of the facility can come and walk their dogs there in a safe environment, in a wooded environment where everyone's on a leash, and we will have multiple receptacles for waste, the animal waste. We're gonna have enough staff there to mitigate any sort of dogs excessively barking, that they'll be brought back inside. The facility is going to have, our plan is to have heated floors, a drainage system, very hygienic, no organic materials in the kennels. So it can be pressure washed with hot water. It's going to be a very unique facility like no other in Ontario as far as we're planning on doing it. And I think it's going to be great for members of the community that want to bring their dogs there. As far as services goes, there's going to be grooming, there's going to be boarding, daycare. And then after that, we could build on it as it goes along. If there's other services that require other zoning changes, we're going to apply for them at that time. But specifically right now, we're just going to stick to boarding, daycare, and grooming for the time being.
So if the public doesn't have access to the riding ring or the racetrack?
Yes, if the public is going to be clients of the facility for boarding and daycare, they can have access to that, but it'll have to be on a very regulated basis. So I know that there's another dog park. Yes, so it's not going to be a public dog park. It's going to be for clients only. So, and the clients are going to have to be screened, consultation, all the animals are going to have all their shots. We're going to run it in a very professional manner. My partner and I run some successful construction businesses in Ottawa, and we have large teams of staff, everything from admin to project management. We're not going to be doing this in a willy-nilly sort of a way. It's going to be run very professionally, and it's going to be something that all the community can be very proud of and safe place to bring their animals. All right, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Carver has rescinded your objections. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Carver? Okay, excellent. It's always helpful to hear from the applicant, so thank you, and thank you, Councillor Strachan, for prompting that. It's often applicants can provide insight in ways that really help to demonstrate the why and the how, so we appreciate that. Is there any final comment in regards to the application? Nope. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Oh, just keep it just for safekeeping. You never know. It can be a reference document as you move forward. All right. So with that, I'll just look to the public again. Any other comments or questions from the public? And I'm going to try to remind myself to amplify my voice, which I can easily do. I just didn't think it was necessary. So not seeing any other hands, I think we're going to move to close the public meeting. And I'll ask council colleagues to move and second, should they wish, the following recommendation. And that is that council approve and enact bylaw 2924 to amend the zoning for 2180 River Road from rural RU to special agricultural kennel SAK. Is that still relevant, Mr. Mosher? Okay. To permit the establishment of a kennel business. And before I get a mover and seconder, I see that Ms. Preston has a question.
Apologies, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to clarify with planning staff, the opening statement to the public meeting indicated SAK-4. Do you require the resolution to have that special note?
Through your worship, to the clerk, no.
Great. Perfect. So mover and a seconder, please. Colleagues, Councillor Strachan, Councillor Sullivan, thank you. Anything else from council? Seeing nothing, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor, please. All right. So that carries. Thank you. And thank you to the applicants and the members of the public for coming. We appreciate it. All right. I think for our next public meeting, I know we have a long list of individuals who've already indicated they would like to speak. So with your indulgence, we're going to take 5 minutes and switch gears, and we'll come back for the public meeting in 5 minutes. Thanks. Okay, I think we're going to get underway. And again, I really apologize if I wasn't audible earlier. It's not my experience that people can't hear me, so it's very surprising when I'm told that I need to speak more loudly. But obviously, I'll make a special effort until we kind of figure out what's going on with our AV system. So if I sound like I'm shouting, it's only because I want to make sure that you can hear me. It's obviously an important part of any public meeting. So we're going to proceed to our public meeting now to consider an application for lands located on a part of 4100 County Road 43, part of Lot 5, Concession 6, former Township of South Gore, now the Municipality of North Grenville, from rural special exception RU 63 and MXP to tourist commercial exception zone C7-6 to permit tourist commercial uses, including a banquet hall and short-term accommodations to be in use, and carry forward previous zone exceptions of the RU 63 zone and to formally cease pit operations. The lands at 4100 County Road 43 are also the subject of a concurrent application for an official plan amendment under the Planning Act, and a concurrent application for consent to sever is imminent. I must advise you that this meeting is your opportunity to voice any objections or concerns you may have with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. If an appellant does not provide oral submissions at this meeting or written submissions before council adopts a proposed amendment, the Ontario Land Tribunal may refuse to consider any objections. Any persons who wish further notice of council's decision concerning this matter can give their email and name to the planner following adjournment. I assume most of you here are present for the public meeting. Is that correct? Safe assumption? Okay, so with that, I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Martin, who will do the presentation. Then we'll go to council colleagues for questions to Ms. Martin. Then we will proceed to the applicant, and then finally to members of the public. Ms. Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll just go to the next slide. I felt it prudent tonight just to provide a little note before I get into the formality of the presentation. So tonight's meeting is a public meeting to hear from members of the public and the applicant regarding the application this evening. No decision is being brought forward this evening for council's consideration related to the official plan amendment or the zoning bylaw amendment. Staff will record comments from the public and prepare a supplemental report for a future council meeting date to address public comments, concerns, and questions that staff may not be able to answer this evening. Comments regarding the application can be made up until the time that council makes a decision. So I just wanted to make it clear to the public that if they had more information they wanted to provide or more comments, that there still is time. And I encourage you to continue to use our planning@northgrenville.on.ca email as that mechanism for providing your comments. You're also welcome to provide printed copies as well. Next slide, please. So some background information on the property. The current zoning of the property is mineral pit, rural exception 63, and environmental protection. The official plan designation is mineral aggregate resource, mineral pit, and provincially significant wetlands. The property is 42 acres in size approximately, and current land uses include residential, mineral extraction, industrial, and commercial. That's the surrounding land uses, and there's also some agriculture activities happening in the area as well. So we do have a mix of land uses present in and around this property. Next slide, please. In regards to documents submitted with the application, a planning rationale, site plan, landscaping plan, hydrogeological study, geotechnical study, stormwater management report, traffic brief, and a mineral aggregate opinion letter were provided. These documents are available to the public upon request. Next slide, please. The property is located at 4100 County Road 43. It is quite a narrow property, and as mentioned, it is approximately 42 hectares in size. It is abutted by a rural industrial commercial subdivision to the west, and a residential subdivision to the east, as well as some additional land uses, including additional aggregate extractive resources uses. Next slide, please. So the outline in blue shows the property, and in the aerial image just gives a demonstration of how the property is developed. So I will preface this aerial photograph is from 2019. So you can see where the extraction is occurring on the property, where the large body of water is located. The forested area to the south is provincially significant wetlands. The zoning and the official plan designation of the provincially significant wetland will not change. It will remain. So if we go to the next slide. The official plan amendment that is being requested would establish a special rural policy area for the property. The amendment would provide transitionary policies for the mineral pit as the resource reaches depletion. So in other words, what would happen is that they would create that special policies that would allow for the transition of the use of the pit from that extractive resource all the way to the proposed tourist commercial use, which would then fall back to a more of a rural land use designation. Next slide, please. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment that is being sought would rezone a portion of the lands to permit tourist commercial uses on the property. The permitted uses under the tourist commercial zone include a motel hotel as well as an assembly hall, which would also include a banquet hall. And in the council report provided, the C7 or the tourist commercial zone zoning provisions, including permitted uses, were provided as an attachment. Next slide, please. So in red is the highlighted area that is subject to the proposed C7 zone. So in essence, it would be, again, keeping out the lands that are zoned provincially significant wetlands and focus on the area that's currently zoned for mineral extraction, and then the front portion, which has the rural zoning use on the property. Next slide, please. I'm going to provide just more of a high-level comment on planning policy. There is a fulsome report that was provided as part of the agenda this evening, which provides my planning analysis in regards to the proposed application. But generally, staff found that the proposed official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment meets the intent of the provincial policy statement, including many of the provisions that are provided up on the screen this evening, including building upon rural character and leveraging rural assets and amenities, using rural infrastructure and public service facilities efficiently, promoting the diversification of the economic base and employment opportunities through goods and services, providing opportunities for sustainable and diversified tourism, including leveraging historical, cultural, and natural assets, and conserving biodiversity and considering the ecological benefits provided by nature. Next slide. Continuing on with the provincial policy statement, which is our policy statement that provides direction for development across the province. We have policies that are supported in regards to recreational tourism and other economic opportunities should be promoted. There are policies related to mineral aggregate land use, which calls for the protection of mineral aggregate resources. The applicant did submit documentation that stated the remaining lifespan of the current pit operation, as well as the non-feasibility of the extraction of any resource that may be identified on the northern portion, and that's more so due to other land uses being present within the area. Next slide, please. What I do want to preface is that you'll find that the official plan policies often mimic the provincial policy statements. Our planning documents are to conform to provincial policy. So we did provide an analysis in regards to the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville's official plan, which establishes land use policies across the region of Leeds and Grenville. So these include rural policies that are very similar to the provincial policy statement, encouraging the promotion and regeneration and community improvement, diversifying of the economic base and employment opportunities, providing opportunities for sustainable and diversified tourism. We'll go to the next slide. There's also objectives for rural land uses, including, again, it is getting repetitive from the policy perspective, but that promotion and development of opportunities related to the management or use of resources, resource-based recreational uses, tourism, limited residential development, et cetera, promoting opportunities to support a diversified rural economy, promoting limited development that is appropriate for the infrastructure that is planned or available, and provide for the protection of natural heritage features and their ecological function. Next slide. And continuing on, and as mentioned in regards to the provincial policy statement, the United Counties official plan has similar policies as it relates to aggregate. So it's in staff's analysis of the proposed application, staff are of the opinion that the proposed zoning and official plan amendment would conform to the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville's official plan. And we go to the next slide, please. So our own official plan regulates land use development across the municipality. And so we do this through creating different land use designations. So under section 4 of our official plan, we do have rural land use policies as it relates to commercial and industrial developments. And there are a variety of criteria that are provided in regards to the establishment of new commercial uses, which would also include in the rural area recreation and tourism. So the planning analysis provides a full review of these criteria, and as well as how the proposed application would meet the intent of the rural land use policies of the municipality's official plan. Next slide, please. And similar to the provincial policy statement and the United Counties official plan, we do have aggregate policies. And as explained before, under the provincial policy analysis, staff were accepting of the explanation in regards to the remaining aggregate life within the pit, as well as the non-feasibility of the extraction of the resource located on the northern portion of the property. Next slide, please. We also have consideration for when there is a request to remove a mineral aggregate designation from our land use schedule, which is Schedule A of our official plan. And so a portion of the property besides the area that's being extracted currently under that pit designation. There are some lands at the northern end that are also identified as potential for mineral aggregate. So staff were satisfied that the proposed redesignation away from the mineral aggregate met the criteria within our official plan. Next slide, please. So this slide provides a breakdown of the minimum requirements in regards to the tourist commercial zone provisions. So the minimum requirements for lot area, lot frontage, front yard setback, rear yard setback, side yard setback, building height, and then the minimum landscaped open space requirements and lot coverage under the tourist commercial zone are met in general by the proposed site plan that was provided. We'll go to the next slide. So this is a copy of the landscape plan that was provided by the applicant and their agent. As you can see, the property currently is developed at the front. This is where a pointer would be useful. So at the left hand of the screen, what you can see is the existing residence to the property, and then there's the accessory structure located just in rear and behind that. That was the applicant back in 2021 didn't reconstruct the barn that was on the property, but relocated and built a similar type barn structure, which is used for personal use. And then in 2022, later in 2022, applied for the permit in regards to the steel building that you'll see on more of the bottom of the screen. The proposed tourist commercial use would allow for the use of the proposed property as a venue or banquet hall, which could allow for things like weddings, conferences, private events. There are 6 accessory geodesic domes that were built on the property last year. They are currently not habitable and cannot be habitable or used for any type of accommodation until such a time that the zoning is changed on the property. So the zoning request would allow for the conversion under the building code of those buildings to allow for habitation. So it would be that resort community piece in regards to the future use of those geodesic domes. If we go to the next slide. Go 2 slides forward, please. You went backwards. This is the site plan that doesn't show the landscaping, but this is the site plan that was also provided with the application. Next slide, please. So we did receive public comment in relation to the application. What I do want to do is I do want to recognize the list of objections that we've received from residents of the municipality. So I want to apologize if I mispronounce any names, and I do encourage you, if your name is not on my list, we have done our best to respond to all of the inquiries that are coming in and confirm receipt of any emails that you may have sent. You can approach me after the meeting and just let me know, and we'll go through our records just to ensure that we have it. So we received a unique letter of objection from a Mike and Sharon Fox. There was a communal letter that was being shared. So we did receive an objection with a communal letter from a Lawrence McFadden and an Allison Watt. Leanne Dion provided her objection with a communal letter. Brandon and Ashley Bloomfield provided their objection with a communal letter. Tony and Norma Sabino provided a unique letter of objection. Arthur Lazinski provided his objection with a communal letter. Rocco Spadaccini and Cindy Hill provided a unique letter of objection. Alina Ioguina provided an objection with the communal letter. Nancy Copeland provided a unique letter of objection. Douglas Melville provided an objection with the communal letter. Alicia Sabino provided an objection with the communal letter and a unique letter of objection. Vladimir Grubina and Tatiana Hilova provided a unique letter of objection. Cassandra Sparks and Corey Quinn provided a unique letter of objection. Donna and David Stein provided a unique letter of objection. Jeff Sheedy and Lynn Guibault provided a unique letter of objection. Robert Hallman and Patricia Siliberto provided a unique letter of objection. Bruce Johnston provided a unique letter of objection. David Karosky provided a unique letter of objection. And Sally Hamilton provided a unique letter of objection. In regards to the comments that the municipality has received, I'll go through, and I do apologize, it may not be a fulsome, exhaustive list, but it is a summary in general of what's been provided by members of the public. This includes questions about the geodesic domes and the permit issuance process, regulation of water bodies and watercraft, intended occupancy of the geodesic domes, questions related to the past minor variances and zoning amendments on the property, site plan control requirements for the property to date, maintenance responsibilities of the shared fence between the subdivision and 4100 County Road 43, the purpose of the severance applications, and I do want to preface that tonight's public meeting is in regards to the zoning and the official plan amendment. An application for severance is handled at the county level, and there would be a different process in which members of the public would provide comment on any severance application. Next slide, please. We've received questions on how will the business be managed and staffed given the overnight accommodation. Questions in regards to the limitation on the number of short-term rentals on the property. Questions in regards to what has the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry commented on in regards to the proposed application. And I will note that staff have circulated the ministry in regards to the application, including the supporting materials. Noise ratings for the geodesic domes, traffic patterns associated with the proposed use, and I will note that the traffic brief was circulated to the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville, as it is on a county road. Compatibility measures, such as limiting the eastern edge of the property to not allow pedestrians or vehicles, limiting use of the lake to non-motorized vehicles, dark skies compliant lighting. Location of fire pits should be limited. 4100 County Road 43 should assume the maintenance of the fence requiring vegetative buffers. So that would be the shared fence between the Maplestone subdivision and the subject property. Next slide, please. Noise concerns related to the short-term rentals and music from the banquet hall for larger events. Environmental pollution. Short-term accommodations offer little control to the individuals who rent these units. Motorized vehicles and creating a nuisance. This includes motorized boats, ATVs, and dirt bikes. Optics on the proposed development as presented by the property owner. Clarification on information included within supporting documents. Increase in complaints to the bylaw services. And tax revenue loss due to the stalled development of the subdivision if a resort venue is established. Next slide, please. So in regards to agency comments, the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority noted no objection to the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. The sewage system approvals, if necessary, are required prior to the issuance of a building permit. And as I did note, we did circulate the traffic brief to the United Counties and did not receive comment before this evening. And we will be following up. And as mentioned, staff will be preparing a supplemental report. And should the counties wish to provide comment, those will be provided through that report. So this brings the end of my formal presentation. All questions that the members of the public may have, and as well as council, must be directed through the chair, which is the mayor. And we do ask that you please state your name and address for the clerk for the record. This is a matter of procedure. So when you do come up, before you make any comments or ask any questions, we do ask that you just identify yourself and your address. Thank you.
So I'm going to go to council just in case they have any questions. It was a very substantial presentation. Council colleagues, is there anything you'd like to ask Ms. Martin before we go to the applicant and or members of the public? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to, excuse me, Director Martin. What is the zoning of the properties to the east of Maplestone subdivision? I notice in the aerial it looks like vacant land, but Do you know how it's zoned currently?
We're just going to look to make sure that's correct. Is it mineral MXB? Is that what I heard?
So, Your Worship, through Your Worship, to clarify with the Deputy Mayor, are you speaking directly to the east of the Maplestone subdivision? So those lands are, so we've got a few properties. There is lands that are zoned as MXP, which is mineral extracted pit. We do have some environmental protection zoning, as there is a wetland feature the further you get towards the boundary road. And the front portion, there's some, sorry, there's some industrial as well.
All right. Anything else, council colleagues, in regards to Ms. Martin's presentation? Not seeing anything. I understand there's a presentation from the applicant, but the applicant wishes to go later. Is that correct, or do we have a presentation this evening? I defer to you in terms of when you'd like to present it. Again, it's really at your discretion. Okay, great. So we'll hear, we're hearing from the applicant now. Welcome, and are people at the mic audible?
Can everyone hear me okay?
Can everyone, okay. So the applicant's representative is audible, and do I remain audible from what you can tell? Okay, great. All right, carry on, thanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Christine McQuaig. I'm a land use planning consultant with Q9 Planning and Design. I'm here to present on the proposed applications with regards to 4100 County Road 43. There is also the owner, Greg Clooney, present, who would like a couple minutes to speak as well following my presentation. So the applications that are being considered as part of this public meeting and discussed is the official plan amendment as stated, as well as the zoning bylaw amendment.
I just ask you to speak directly into the mic, because
yes,
I'm getting feedback that you're not as audible as we would like. Thanks.
I'm not the loudest, but I will try. So advance to the next slide, please. What's the 3 dots? Okay, it's red. I'm good, okay. Sorry. So the subject site is located off of County Road 43, east of Kempville and east of the 416. The next slide, please. So as stated by Director Martin, the subject property is quite long. Though it does appear narrow, its frontage is approximately 200 meters and its depth is approximately 2,000 meters. So it is quite a large property. It is 42.4 hectares. And we'll kind of dive into the various parts of it in my presentation. To the east is the residential subdivision, and to the west is the sort of industrial commercial subdivision on Long County Road 43 as well. Next slide, please. So this slide just generally identifies the surrounding subject land uses. Towards the north, you will see there's agricultural farming operations. I believe there's also a B&B in that general area. There's a rural subdivision to the northwest. Moving sort of west of the subject property, there's commercial and industrial, as well as South Gore Park. To the east of the subject property is a rural subdivision, the Maplestone subdivision, and east of that, as identified, is mineral aggregate zoned area, which is currently undeveloped. Next slide, please. So breaking down the property into sort of like 3 different subject areas, we've already identified the south portion is provincially significant wetland, and it is environmentally protected and is not the subject of this application. It's not being touched. The middle portion of the property is where the aggregate pit operation has been taking place, and that has resulted in the creation of the lake feature that is identified on the aerial on the screen. The north portion of the site, which represents approximately 6.7 hectares, so it's still a large parcel of land in its own right, currently has existing residential and accessory uses. It's sort of the primary area where development is taking place. It currently abuts 4 lots within the Maplestone residential subdivision. And then on the west side, the north portion of the property abuts approximately 6 lots, approximately 4 to 5 lots within the industrial park to the west. Next slide. So zooming in even a little bit further, just walking through sort of what's on the site currently, the stone farmhouse towards the front of the property, which you can see on the aerial. And then moving further south towards the west, there's the steel structure, which is a storage building and hobby mill. And then directly east of that is the current recreation facility that's been used by the family and friends, and that is the facility that is planned to be converted to a sort of banquet hall venue facility. Moving further south towards the lakes, there are currently accessory structures, being the geodesic domes on the subject site, and then between the proposed venue and the accessory dome structures, there is some recreational on site, and then as part of the site plan, you can identify at the sort of northwest of the property, we've identified where a new proposed access would be off of County Road 43. The current access, which is central on the site, would not be a primary access for the ultimate use of the property. Next slide. So as a general overview, as we stated, the mineral extraction component, the pit itself is nearly complete. The Class A license is in the process of being relinquished. The site is therefore transitioning from aggregate extraction to a future use, that being tourist commercial being desired. As part of that transition, applications are required, that being an official plan amendment, a zoning bylaw amendment, and a site plan control application. The official plan amendment is to seek a rural designation special policy area to allow the transition of the pit operation, close it down, and move on to a future use. The zoning bylaw amendment is to pursue that tourist commercial use with special exceptions. And given that that middle portion of the site where the lake is and the pit operation is, until that pit component, until the license is fully closed, that portion can be subject to a holding zone that would, limit the use to the extraction pit, and it can switch over and the holding zone can be lifted, and then the tourist commercial uses can therefore be employed. Next slide, please. This is just identifying where the OPA is taking place on the lands, and I don't want to get into too much repetition, so I'll move on to the next slide. This is where I've sort of broken down the site again into 3 pieces. The environmentally protected area is not being touched at the south. The middle portion we've identified would be appropriate for a holding zone for that sort of pit transition that also ties into the special policy area for the OPA that we've been discussing. And then the current north portion of the property that is currently zoned rural with a special exception will transition to the tourist commercial zone. Next slide. This is the landscaped plan, and this is an updated version of the landscape plan that shows some of the most recently planted trees as well as future trees and other landscaping that is proposed. We note that the recreational space that's being identified as a change of use for that future event space is approximately 48 meters from the east property line towards the Maplestone subdivision. And then the geodesic domes that are proposed to be for a change of use for short-term accommodation are approximately 45 meters from the east property line. And one of the comments from our sort of informal public meeting was the concerning consideration for what if there's, future accommodation units and where would they be and how would that be sort of addressed. There's no current intent to build something right now. The hydrogeological report did reference that. We want to preface that a hydrogeological report is very expensive and very time consuming, and if there's any potential for, what if we want to do this down the road, it's advantageous to ask them to review those sort of future scenarios at that time so that you have a degree of comfort, and then you're also taking a very conservative approach to review of what's being proposed at this time. Given the concerns that we heard in our public meeting on March 26th, we're happy to identify that future accommodation units would generally be located away from the residential subdivision to the east. Next slide, please. I obviously don't want to get into too much repetition. I will state that we did prepare a fulsome planning report, and we have gone through the provincial policy statement, the United Counties official plan and the Municipality of North Grenville official plan in detail, and did look at every single policy that was relevant to confirm and be certain that the proposed change of use and transition of this subject site was, one, consistent with the provincial policy statement and conformed to all relevant official plan policies, both at the county level and at the municipal level. So I won't get into great detail on the specific policies, but I do want to specifically note that in the provincial policy statement, it does provide support for tourist commercial uses, and it does identify opportunities to leverage existing assets and situations. And for this particular transition of use, there's an appreciation for the subject site is very heavily landscaped at this time. The lake that was created as a result of the pit extraction naturally creates this opportunity to take advantage of that sort of rural asset as a tourist accommodation. And because the site is large enough, it can accommodate this use with significant setbacks in excess of what's required and leaving room for that additional buffer. In addition to that, because this site was already a pit extraction use when the adjacent subdivision was in place, there were components put into the subdivision agreement that allowed for recognition that a pit use is incompatible adjacent to residential. And so this resulted in the requirement for a 15-meter no-touch buffer zone, additional trees, a fence, and a berm. All of those things support a transition to a use and allow that sort of off-site buffering as well. So there's on-site buffering capabilities as well as off-site buffering capabilities. And so all of these things tie in and provide support within these policies that we have reviewed. So next slide, please. So again, within the PPS, recreational tourism is all both supported and should be promoted, that it be compatible, hence my discussion of how we're able to leverage these current assets and context, and that these uses should be located where you can accommodate that separation. And so we've demonstrated that because this site is large enough, we can create that separation from abutting land uses, and it also creates a suitable transition going from the industrial on the west towards the residential on the east. It sort of creates a transition of uses between those two components as well. Next slide, please. In the PPS, as Dr. Martin stated, there are policies that direct aggregate use and their protection. The criteria for allowing additional uses that are outside of that aggregate use is to determine that the aggregate use is not feasible, that the proposed land use serves a greater long-term public interest, and that issues of public health, safety, and environmental impact are addressed. So there was a report prepared by MHPC that did identify that further extraction uses on the subject site are not considered feasible. The current pit is mostly done, and the proposed land use, in our opinion, does serve a greater long-term public interest. The local official plan identifies that tourism is going to be needed in Kemptville and the surrounding area, and a tourist commercial use allows us to sort of leverage the naturalistic components of that site and further support, any reductions in environmental impact. Other uses, whether it was be a rural industrial sort of development of the site, would have a greater impact on the naturalistic context of the subject site. Next slide, please. In the United Counties and Leeds and Grenville official plan, we did review all of those relevant policies as well, and as stated, it is a lot of repetition from the provincial policy statement. We note that it conforms to section 3.1 as well as 3.3.1. Next slide, please. Further, section 332 of the Leeds and Grenville official plan, it notes that recreational and tourist commercial uses, open space, and limited residential development may be permitted in rural lands without requiring an amendment to this plan, but may be subject to a rezoning and provided the use is permitted in the local municipal official plan and meets the criteria established within the local municipal official plan. This policy is what triggers the official plan amendment in the local official plan to bring it into conformity with the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville official plan. Next slide, please. The North Grenville official plan review, we reviewed the policies within section 2.2, as well as the policies for commercial and industrial in section 4.3. and found that, the proposed application and change of use is, conforms to all of those policies. Next slide, please. So in the review of the rural, commercial, and industrial uses within the North Grenville official plan, it notes that the use must be appropriate and compatible. The access to the use will be carefully controlled, no more than 2 accesses, that it be appropriately screened and buffered, adequate off-street parking, signage and outdoor storage appropriately controlled, that the use is placed in a separate category, and that development on the lot will be subject to site plan approval. So starting from the bottom, a site plan application was submitted. The use is being directed to a specific zoning bylaw category, which is the tourist commercial. Advertising, signage, and outdoor storage is, a matter that's controlled as well through site plan control. We've greatly exceeded the off-street parking requirements. The use is going to be appropriately screened and significantly buffered. Access to the use is to be carefully controlled with a new access that is wide enough to accommodate emergency vehicles. And we do find, following a review of the policy, the subject site, the buffers that are in place both already and as well as off-site, find the use to be both appropriate and compatible. Next slide, please. The local official plan does review the instances of the mineral aggregate policies that we must review. They're a repetition from the provincial policy statements, so I won't repeat those. Next slide, please. The criteria that does need to be reviewed as part of the official plan as we move away from this use is to provide evidence that the aggregate extraction is no longer feasible, reason for the choice of this location for this use, and consideration of sequential land use, as well as the status of rehabilitation. We've addressed this in our planning rationale, but it's important to note that an MHBC report was provided, and upon review, there is evidence that the aggregate extraction is no longer feasible. Reason for the choice of location, because the aggregate is exhausted, rehabilitation has identified leaving the lake as it is, and the location of the site on County Road 43 does notably support tourism activity, and the created lake permits that sort of opportunity that we can leverage to utilize the advantages of the site and the existing context to support appropriate rural tourist commercial activities. For sequential land use, it's not applicable because the resource is being extracted as we move on to the next use. And then with regards to status of rehabilitation, as I've noted, that is simply leaving the lake as is. They don't need to fill it in or do anything else with it. Next slide, please. So in undertaking a review of the zoning, the proposed application exceeds the required parking. It exceeds all performance standards with regards to lot coverage, landscaped open space, and notably the minimum side yard requirement, which is 6 meters, and we've identified that it's 45 meters on the east and 34 meters on the west. Next slide, please. So on March 26th, we held a sort of developer-led, applicant-led public meeting once we were advised that there were a number of comments and concerns that were coming in to municipal staff. At this meeting, we did, have a discussion about the concerns that people had, and so I do want to identify what those concerns were, and this is a summary from that meeting as well. So noise, in my understanding of the concerns that were raised, was one of the primary concerns. Transparency of future development, the process of the existing domes, the use of the lake, safety, trespassing, purpose of the severance applications, the pit operation and its relationship with M&R, site lighting and impact, as well as traffic impacts. So to go through sort of our responses to these, and I do want to obviously leave opportunity for further discussion. With regards to the traffic impacts, there was a transportation brief that was submitted, and we did have consultation with the county's office with regards to the proposed new access off of County Road 43. With regards to site lighting and impact, a photometric plan is going to be prepared and submitted with regards to the site plan control application, and that will be reviewed by municipal staff. With regards to the pit operation, the Class A license is in the process of being relinquished. With regards to the severance applications, this is to facilitate business operations, and severances for that purpose are common and frequent for large operations. With regards to trespassing, there is significant degree of landscaping, and there is a fence there as well. So, while that's not a planning consideration, there are measures in place to sort of deter trespassing either from either side. With regards to safety, it is identified that there will be a facility manager on site, and Greg Clooney, the owner, will also speak to the management of site operations following my presentation. With regards to the use of the lake, we do note that the lake use is not under municipal authority. So, that's a discussion. It's about sort of the use of one's property, and this property happens to have, whether you call it a pond or a lake or what have you, it is present on the site, and it is allowed to be used by the owners of the site. With regards to the existing domes process, as Director Martin stated, the domes that are on site now, they meet the requirements as an accessory structure. That's all they are permitted to be at this time. They are not permitted as a habitation use. That is sort of why these applications are here, is to seek those change in use for these opportunities that are present on the site. And then with regards to transparency of future development, we did identify, if there is going to be future habitation units, they would be towards the west side of the site. And then for us, the primary indication that we were hearing was that there was concern about noise. And so while it's not a requirement for the applications, either at the site plan level or the amendments that we're discussing tonight, the applicant did retain a noise consultant to review the subject site, where it's going to be, and whether there would be any impact or whether there would be any mitigation measures that were required. And the noise consultant is present tonight to answer questions should they arise. And so that's sort of the general overview of the main concerns that we heard at our meeting on March 26th. Next slide, please. So,
and might I ask, some people are having difficulty hearing from you, and I know many members of the public are eager to speak, which is why I think you were weighing where you should present this information on behalf of the applicant. So how much longer do you have for
I
this?
think this is the second last slide.
Perfect. And if you could amplify your voice again.
Sure.
And then we'll transition.
Apologies for that. So with regards to the noise mitigation measures, we do note that the on-site measures, we do greatly exceed the setback that's required. The event center is going to be 48 meters from the east property line. The domes will be 45 meters from the east property line. There's approximately 40 meters of treed buffer. The applicant is planning to utilize decibel readers along the property edge. There have been 50 trees planted that are coniferous. There is planned to be another 175 deciduous trees, as well as 50 coniferous. And then surrounding the domes area, there are going to be an additional 28 deciduous trees, 56 coniferous trees, and various shrubs, perennials, and ornamental grasses. Of the off-site measures, and that's where we can kind of leverage the existing context, is that because the site was a pit operation, as I stated, there's already built-in measures for that additional buffer on the subdivision side to the east. That being a berm, the 15-meter sort of no-touch area, and a treed buffer that was part of the subdivision agreement, as well as the fence. Next slide. So in closing, the closing of the aggregate operation creates the opportunity to leverage the created lake for tourist commercial activities, as well as leveraging built-in mitigation buffers incorporated into the residential subdivision to the east. The proposed amendments are consistent with the provincial policy statement. They conform to the county OP as well as the local OP. The proposed use provides significant buffer in excess of zone requirements. The subject site is large enough to accommodate the proposed use and integrate vegetated buffering. The proposed use supports a suitable transition between the residential to the east and the industrial to the west. And the use is suitable for the rural area where it has access to a county road and where it requires a large enough parcel of land to be suitable and appropriate. So that, you can hop to the next slide. But that concludes my presentation, and I appreciate everyone's patience, but I did want to make sure that all the information was there. I'm present to answer questions. The owner is present to answer questions, and he would like a couple minutes to speak at your discretion for timing. And then we also have the noise consultant, Josh Foster with Gradient Wind, present to answer questions.
Thank you. That was a lot of information. So I appreciate that you did your best to get through it quickly. So if the applicant himself wishes to make a quick comment now, we'll do that, unless you want to wait till the end, and then we'll proceed to receive comments from the public, as long as my county council colleagues don't have any questions specific to the presentations we've received so far. Thank you. So I think for now. We'll hear from the applicant. The mic is on. If you could just, of course, state your name as per protocol and amplify your voice, because I'm still getting signals from the room that they're having a hard time hearing all of us.
Okay. Good
Thank
evening,
you.
Your Worship. My name is Greg Clooney, and I'm the applicant. You've heard from staff about how our rezoning application meets with all provincial municipal objectives and was evidenced by the extremely strong supportive staff report. But what the report does not speak to are the benefits to North Grenville and specifically to Kempville. Not a day goes by where our employees and the employees of our suppliers and subcontractors do not purchase goods and services from local businesses. Canadian Tire, Kempville Building Center, Tim Hortons, Starbucks, all the quick service restaurants and chip wagons and local shops. A fantastic local company called the Best Adirondack Chair Company supplied approximately $30,000 worth of furniture to the site, and we intend to purchase an additional $100,000 worth of furniture from them. When the business opens, we will join the Chamber of Commerce, and we will actively look for opportunities to partner with local vendors. Several of our staff are residents of Kempville, and we plan to hire dozens of additional full and part-time employees, and presumably they'll live in the community. Plans to collaborate with the Economic Development and Tourism departments within North Grenville. We've already had an initial meeting with Heather Curry to discuss our plans, and Heather was very excited about what this project could actually bring to the community. And our project is very well aligned with the North Grenville Tourism Report that was created in the summer of 2019 and meets a lot of the objectives of that plan. A lot of people have been asking about operations, and our intention is to operate it as a boutique high-end wedding and special event facility. We intend to offer corporate retreat and educational facilities for smaller senior leadership teams, offering a spousal component for spouses of attendees to enjoy off-site local amenities in and around North Grenville. Our 37-year-old family business has built the majority of Ottawa's largest public meeting spaces, such as Lansdowne Park, LeBreton Flats, and much of the Byward Market. We have undertaken large-scale public art installations. Our intention is to build a world-class facility here in Kempville that will have outstanding landscaping and public art. In fact, we have already been working with a local artist on concepts. The property will be maintained at the highest levels, and we will manage the property with a high degree of environmental sensitivity. We have already planted thousands of trees, shrubs, perennials, and ground covers and grasses, and we intend to plant thousands more. We learned that maybe one of the neighbors is going to present a drone video, and I just learned it earlier in the week, and I have a few pictures that we put on a stick, and I'm wondering if you could put those pictures up. It'll give you a really good perspective.
Ms. Preston, is that doable? Okay. Just give us a minute. Thank you. We can't see anything yet.
You indicated the photos?
Yes. So this shows an overview at the south end of the 7.6 hectares at the start of the lake, and you can see the landscape buffer to the east. Next photo. That's an even better overview of the whole property, and you can see the landscape buffer to the east. That was taken in September of 2023, and since then we have only removed dead and diseased ash trees on the east boundary, and to replace the dead ash trees, we're adding hundreds more coniferous and deciduous trees along there, but you can see the buffer that's there, and that's there from spring through fall. Next picture. More of the same, but you can actually see the dead ash trees mixed in among the live trees. That's what was removed over this winter. They were tagged last fall. Next. Again, that's a shot across the banquet facility looking over towards the east property boundary. And that's an overview of the front of the property. So you can see this place is top notch. And we're not having riffraff in there for a wedding. This is a high-end venue, and it'll be managed as such. On the formal submission of our Ministry of Natural Resources license, the license was in place for decades. Not much extraction had occurred prior to our purchase of the property. We made a decision to expedite extraction, and by so doing, we actually hauled the sand into Ottawa for further processing. It was made into concrete and asphalt sand. If we didn't do that, it would be like the majority of the other pits in and around Kemptville that are half abandoned and you know, operate for 50 years and are never really rehabilitated. We could have taken decades. No, there's no minimum amount of extraction that we're obligated to undertake. A formal request was made to the MNR to surrender our Class A license this week, which was always the plan. And the Ministry of Natural Resources requires operators to rehabilitate required pits. Our rehabilitation plan is the lake. That was set out in our operational plan. And the MNR has visited the site, and they're actually quite excited about what the next life of this pit could be. And we intend to actually enter it into a provincial competition in 2025, which focuses on innovative renewal. You know, in terms of community relations, the majority of the issues raised at our public meeting and also that seem to have been sent straight to staff are not related to sound planning rationale of the project. They're related to items and issues that are covered by municipal bylaws and by site plan control. No site plan control would ever require us to undertake the level of landscaping that we intend to complete on this site. On our own, we obtained a noise consultant whose professional opinion is that there is no concern with the, you know, what might be the decibel readings at the property line. Our expectations relative to the behavior of our guests will be high and in line with our premium offering. We do not expect any issues, and we will be supervising noise very closely. The facility will not be unattended once we're up and running, and there's overnight accommodations. Our project and intended use are, in my opinion, much better for the community than a sand and gravel operation or an extension of the industrial park to the west, which we certainly were in active discussion with the municipality in 2014 around the time the subdivision was approved. It's somewhat ironic that we face this opposition because there were several oversights at the time of the approval of the Maplestone subdivision, and in fact, without our having been extremely conciliatory at the time of the application, the subdivision would likely not have been approved, and given the unfavorable staff report at the time. And I can get into details, but I won't at this time. But we have a big file that dates back to 2014 that many of the residents of the subdivision would not be aware of. So just to say that we were very pro-development, and we were very reasonable in the approval of that subdivision. One last point. Continuing on in that theme, we think it would be very invasive to have a 1.5 meter berm go in the back of these 15 adjoining residents' yards. It would just not probably serve the purpose, and we would much rather see that money be spent on maybe some additional trees that would enhance the value of their properties. A 1.5 meter high berm extending all the way along there. I'm not sure what it would do for noise attenuation, but it wouldn't be very nice to look at. It wouldn't be very nice to cut the grass on it. So that would be something that we would like to maybe keep on the table and discuss in the future.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clooney. Before Mr. Clooney leaves, any questions from council colleagues? I'm not seeing any, so thank you, Mr. Clooney, appreciate it. Okay. So at this point, I've been advised by the clerk, obviously, that there's a number of people who have indicated that they would like to speak. That list is up to 19 individuals. I'm not sure if everyone continues to wish to speak. So with that in mind, if you would like to address the mic, I am aware there's some parents in the room with little ones, so if there are parents who wish to speak first so they can take their little ones at home, I certainly invite you to come down so you can do that sooner rather than later. Otherwise, we'll just invite various individuals to come forward. I can read the list of names if that's helpful, but some of you may have reconsidered or never intended to speak in the first place, so it would be just as easy if you self-identified and came forward, and we can review the list as we go. Our procedural bylaw, just because of the number of speakers, advises that every speaker should have no more than 10 minutes. If I do the math on 19 people times 10, that's 190 minutes. That's over 3 hours, and it's 8:30. So with that in mind, I think we'll start. We'll see how we go. I have asked Ms. Preston to at least keep a time clock. It's not actually something I'm particularly good at because I can speak at length myself. So she's going to keep a note of the time, and also we'll have a clock running on the screen. Realistic at this stage, we wouldn't get through 19 speakers, so we may have to take a pause, suspend the meeting, consider our options, but I note that there's a couple of people wishing to speak first. So why don't you come on down, and we'll go from there. Thanks. And I'm just going to make sure that Ms. Preston is keeping an eye on the time, and I think you have something else to say, Ms. Preston.
Yes, I just wanted to note that as well, we had one electronic submission for a video for a member who has time constraints for this evening too, so perhaps we would endeavor to watch his next if you were agreeable.
No, I would prefer that we accommodate the parents in the room with young children, and then perhaps we can play the video. Is there a parent that was wishing to speak? Or is that person?
Are you
Okay. Okay, great.
Okay, because I'm sure you have.
Took care of my obligations already. So.
Okay, excellent.
You probably have updated pictures because those weren't.
Yeah, those were
not
very updated.
Okay, thank you. My name is Donna Stein. I'm a resident of Maplestone Drive.
And just your address, sorry, for the record?
Sorry?
I will need your address, please.
116.
Thank you.
Sorry. From the meeting minutes dated July 14th, 2021, the proposal at that time, Ms. McQuaig explained that the proposal was to remove the existing barn and replace it with a reclaimed wood barn that would be located behind the existing house. At that time, Doreen O'Sullivan inquired as to the intended use of the new barn. Christine McQuaig confirmed that to be partially a hobby mill, already in use in the existing barn and not for commercial use. With the majority being a family get-together area, Greg Clooney also confirmed to you, Madam Mayor, that the reason for the rebuild is that the original barn is in total disrepair. Christine McQuaig further explained that the nature of the hobby woodworking shop was never meant to be commercialized. Again, I don't know how we got to where we are today with those statements. According to page 7 of the planning rationale, the applicant has already engaged with North Grenville staff and the mayor. It also indicated public consultation will occur. I can assure you there was none until you guys started getting phone calls and emails. On the planning rationale, the first page indicates applications to pursue official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, site plan control, and consent to sever applications to permit the construction of 6 modular geodomestic domes and conversion of the existing barn to a banquet hall. I seem to have missed something because the domes are already built to be short-term rental units, and one neighbor was already given a guided tour of the banquet hall last year. A lot of studies have been conducted and submitted. I bring your attention to the transportation one dated January 24th, 2024. I certainly hope that the actual traffic study was not completed on a Wednesday in January. We certainly know the volume of traffic is different in the summer coming along County Road 43. If the study was completed in the fall, winter, then you are comparing apples to oranges when it comes to the increased volume of traffic in summer. Now with the weddings taking place, I don't think any resident will be impressed with the nightmare this will create. The applicant also refers to this as an opportunity to support the growth of ecological benefits. Where is the report outlining the effect this will have on the birds and animals that currently inhabit this land? How do they propose to maintain nature with the inevitable noise pollution this resort will generate? They can plant as many trees as they want, but you know that sound travels. Sound travels with the wind where we are. Sound travels with the humidity and the density of the air. In the Provincial Policy Statement 2020, Section 1.153 states recreational tourism and other economic opportunities should be promoted. Does it state next to a residential neighborhood? The applicant indicates that this plan serves the greatest interest of supporting rural economy and the tourism industry within the rural area without impacting health, safety, or the environment. This plan, as proposed, does exactly the opposite. It impacts public safety with the potential for mischief, drunk driving, which I personally know about. There is no Uber, Lyft, taxis, and limited public transportation, yet you're going to be serving alcohol and having people leave this venue. It's a nightmare waiting to happen. This will affect the public and mental health of those in neighboring properties. I asked council, would you like to sit in your backyard and have to deal with the sound of music coming from a venue, and then the after-hour party revelers still continuing on, carousing until the wee morning hours? A professor at Toronto Metropolitan University specializes in noise and environmental health. He says research around the world suggests strong evidence for negative health effects from noise adjacent to your home. They're pretty significant, he said. We're talking about our heart disease, cardiovascular disease, and downstream metabolic diseases. This plan dismisses our rights to a peaceful existence in our own neighborhood. A water study was also generated, but nowhere does it mention dealing with the volumes of laundry that a commercial tourist property will create. At the public consultation, I asked, what are the plans to deal with this? No response. As they build more geodesic domes, I believe 18 is the number, you saw the future plan there. We have heard about plans for a hotel, and then apply for the permits that will put a strain on the water resources in this neighborhood. Several questions were asked about how this resort and venue was going to operate, and we received no responses. If I was operating a business or putting forth a business plan, I would want to know about my security costs. I want to know what it's going to cost me in catering. Everything. There was nothing explained to us. Council one day would hope for some sort of plan on how this will operate, as its day-to-day operations will affect the neighbors, but alas, the questions about security and the actual operational policies and procedures went unanswered. By approving this plan, you are opening up your tax-paying residents to a world of hurt and disruption on the lifestyle we pay taxes towards. I did my homework before buying in the neighborhood, as did so many of our residents. I consulted the minute meetings dated July 14th and was satisfied by the assurance from Ms. McQuaig that any intent was not to commercialize the barn or property. Allowing any of these plans and zoning changes will result in all residents experiencing a reduction in enjoyment of our homes and a significant reduction of value in our homes. Our community gives us peace and tranquility and fosters the mental and emotional well-being of us all. I would like to ask you a question to all here tonight. Would any of you bought a house in this neighborhood knowing this was going in? Raise your hand. No. Contrary to what Ms. McQuaig stated at the public consultation meeting, this will devalue our properties and will not make our homes not sellable. But also our community developer, Mr. Scouten, will never sell another lot. There's 10 vacant lots and 5 homes in current build status not yet sold. That's a lot of revenue that is being lost to the township from taxes. Our lots will sit unoccupied, and our neighborhood will never be completed. That's far more concerning. Factual news articles also outline the fallout of municipalities allowing short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods. This is happening across the country. I forwarded you all a list of all the articles where townships are having to spend a lot of money going back to the drawing board trying to figure out where they went wrong in allowing these rentals to happen. Mr. Stevenson indicated in the North Grenville Times that the intent is to be a high-end venue and resort. However, that cannot be controlled. You cannot discriminate against people, and although they may have money, they may not always be the most respectful people. This we have learned. Apparently, the intent is that the domes are not rented separate from the venue. However, I digress on intent because it was never Mr. Clooney's intent to commercialize the hobby barn. I respectfully ask that you take these questions and think and put yourself in our neighborhood and what would you want to live next to. Like I said, they can say they have the setbacks, meters, but sound doesn't stop at 15 meters. It doesn't stop at 43 feet. It continues and will permeate and ruin the lives of so many people. You have retirees, you have active military, you have RCMP, all who bought homes in a rural setting, and it needs to remain that way. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. So next, I just, again, would you like to come forward? I'm just looking at the parent with the young child in the audience. Thank you. Take your time. And just, of course, your name and address, please.
Yes, my name's Ashley Bloomfield. I live at 311 Moore Crescent. Before I start, I'd just like to express my frustration with the process today, that we were advised this is supposed to start at 6:30. It was an hour before it actually started, and now we're being limited as a neighborhood in terms of the time that we have available to speak, which seems to be indicative of the way the process has gone so far, where the residents have been disregarded. My family and I lived in our last house for 12 years. We spent several of the past years prior to moving to our current home searching for a town and a home that would see us through our children finishing school and pursuing higher education. We finally decided on Kentville for all that it has to offer our growing family, including good schools with French immersion programs, access to waterways for fishing, green space for us to explore, embrace, and appreciate nature, and a close-knit community that we could be part of as we raise our children to be responsible and respectful human beings. We fell in love with the location of our subdivision, being close enough to essential amenities, yet surrounded by rural beauty, which offered us privacy, the opportunity to enjoy the sounds and sights of nature, a night sky free from light pollution where we can actually see the stars, and a network of neighbors and children that we hoped would soon become our friends and friends of our children. I was pregnant with my daughter when we moved into our home, and she ended up being born early, 17 days after we moved in. When I think about how long we've lived here, I also think that it's the only home that she's ever known. It's her entire life plus 17 days. And a lot has changed in this time that has devastated our family dreams. We have a wonderful community full of smart, considerate, and kind-hearted people that I'm proud to call my neighbors. We have the same concerns about how this is going to impact our neighborhood, including the extreme change we expect to see in our living conditions, a certain devaluation of our homes and properties, the impact to wildlife, the impact to the aquifer which supplies our well water, light pollution, noise pollution, the impact to our privacy, not being able to have our curtains open, and the ability to enjoy our properties without spectators and interruption. Traffic, including vehicles and foot traffic, from wandering and exploring and potentially inebriated guests into our neighborhood. Personal security and safety. Hundreds of trees have been destroyed for the construction of unsightly, gigantic white domes that are in stark contrast to the surrounding natural beauty. I understand that the most recent rezoning approval was done in the interest of the owners of 4100 County Road 43, enhancing their property for their personal family enjoyment. Had this truthfully been their intent, I could appreciate and I could accept this. We are simply asking the same thing, for our properties to remain a place for our personal family enjoyment. I have never met the owner of this property, thinking that if this were any other neighbor, I would simply go over and ask what was going on because nothing had been shared. I decided to do this the week before the Labor Day long weekend last year. It was during this visit that I learned from one of the workers that the owner did not live on the property. He shared that he had been working on developing the property to be a wedding and events venue for the past 4 years. I left my name and phone number for the owner to call me so that we could talk. To this day, I have never heard from him, and this is the first time I've seen him. So far, in the planning and construction, this person has shown no consideration for others or his surroundings, and I do not expect that this will change if a zoning change is approved. My house backs directly onto the property at 4100 County Road 43. I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old whose bedrooms are at the back of the house directly facing this property where these domes are located. I can't possibly expect to be able to put them to sleep at a reasonable hour with the purposes planned for this property, which is 7 days per week. Last summer, the owners of 4100 County Road 43 had a small gathering, and there was no more than 10 people on their dock. I'm sure that they weren't being overly loud, but sound carries over water and it seems amplified. I could clearly hear them talking and laughing when we were inside our home with all of our windows closed, eating dinner with the music at a low volume. I share this because, while I don't have any concerns with them enjoying their property, this was the impact we felt with such a small number of people. When I think about extrapolating this experience to account for the number of people that will regularly be traversing the adjoining property, 7 days per week, all year round, my home becomes unlivable. This is just one family's dream. I ask you to consider not only our dream, but the dreams of the other families currently residing in our subdivision and of the future families that may never come, now knowing what they'll be buying or building into. Please take a human approach to this decision. Please think about how you would feel if this were your home and your family. I urge you to consider that there is nothing that says that you have to approve this. Just because they've met all the requirements on paper with setbacks, with soundproofing their banquet hall, with decibel readers, and whatever else they try to share, I urge you to consider the fact that this owner has a history of sharing untruths, of not following the rules, of not going through proper channels, and of not following due process, and of selfishly prioritizing his own needs and gains above the needs of this community. I urge you to think about why you're in the job that you're in, which I expect is to make North Grenville and Kemptville a great place to live and a municipality and community that values people and families over profits. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And if I could just have your name and address, please. Thank you.
Bruce Johnston, 303 Moore Crescent. And thank you for this opportunity. A couple of things that were mentioned by planning, I just wanted to query. The application for rezoning states that this will permit the construction of the 6 geodesic domes. What we heard from planning was no longer permits the construction. What it would permit is making those domes habitable, because they apparently are not habitable at the moment. So has the actual application changed from the original one? The other aspect of that is absolutely no reason why those domes can't be made habitable, because I believe they're being constructed for family use. And so I have no idea if that can be clarified at some point. We had our meeting with Christine McQuaid on the 26th of March and got a full briefing on the proposal. And in that briefing, she stated that the requested zoning applications constitute good land use planning. And we heard basically the same thing from the applicant a few minutes ago. But based on that premise, the application states that the zoning amendment will permit the construction of 6 modular domes and the conversion of the existing barn to a banquet hall. Now, it's axiomatic that planning almost invariably precedes construction. So none of the planning that we've heard lauded this evening was conducted prior to the construction of these facilities. So when I reminded Christine at this meeting that the domes and banquet hall already have been completed, she opined, quote, "I admit the optics don't look good," unquote. Well, it's worse than that. I would contend that there was no existing barn. The present building was intended to be a banquet hall at the time the first shovel went into the ground. And the application doesn't mention the tennis, basketball, and sports courts, all with professional lighting, that will obviously be part of the commercial operation as opposed to the family use. I too visited the property last fall and was given a tour of the banquet hall, which is pretty impressive, I must say. But it showed nothing of its, quote, former role as a barn. I mean, let's be reasonable. I was told that in terms of the courts, that the wives, this was an employee that I was talking to, and he told me that, yeah, the wives like to play tennis and the boys like to play basketball and the girls like to use the sports courts. The domes, it was pointed out to me, were built for the use of the children of the two families. Again, and this is only last October, November. So we in Maplestone Lakes have been watching and speculating the intent of the development next door for years. Rumors of classic car museums, wedding venues, event centers have all surfaced often enough to convince us that commercial tourist operations were intended from the outset. So it's more than bad optics. The D&G website, when you go on it, has an extensive listing of the major projects undertaken by this company. This company knows how to do things right. But the application that we're discussing this evening is at best not telling the truth or even the full story of how we got here right now this evening. One final note, the Iridio Valley Conservation Authority gave their approval, I gather, but did it not specify they still are looking forward to seeing the building permits? If they are, of course, I gather they've already been approved, and so that's something else you might look into. Thank you.
So at this stage, I think we'll continue to hear from members of the public and then ask staff to comment at the end in regards to any of the questions or clarifications that are sought. So who else would like to come forward? Anyone else? Okay, thanks.
Hello, can you hear me? Awesome. Kind of nervous, guys. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Artur Lashinsky. I live at 114 Maplestone Drive, and I'm here today representing myself, my wife, Bonnie Chan, and our registered miniature wiener dog, Chili. I respectfully ask Madam Mayor and honorable members of the council to, when the time comes, not approve the zoning bylaw amendment. At the informal public hearing on March 26th, as I understood it, once the council approves the rezoning, the owners of 4100 County Road 43 will have the ability to operate a resort and a banquet hall business with a capacity of 220 people without another public consultation. It was also communicated to us at that time that the applicants are not required to present to council or members of the public for consideration a business plan or any documents that demonstrate their ability to operate a 220-person banquet hall business and resort in a way that would respect the rights of their neighbors and abide by the bylaws. I can appreciate that council would have already been presented with all of the documents outlining that the land can be rezoned. But as part of this process, shouldn't the council also be presented with substantive documentation that would lead you to the conclusion that it should be rezoned? A 220-person capacity banquet hall can only be successfully run by a group with the acumen, experience, and expertise necessary to manage this unique business operation and risk profile. The consideration of waste, noise, light pollution, car and foot traffic, and the responsible management of alcohol, just to name a few. In fact, during the informal public inquiry, the applicant's representatives reminded us twice of the considerable wealth of the applicant. And it was only through the suggestion of others and the evolution of ideas that the owners are considering taking on such a venture. To me, this does not sound like the actions of committed and serious resort and 220-person banquet hall operators, but rather individuals with the wealth and means influenced by the suggestion of others and unencumbered by how their decisions will affect their neighbors. In their latest communication from a week ago, it says their intent that this will be carefully managed higher-end venue and that there will be a facility manager present. But many of our questions from 2 weeks ago were either unanswered because they did not want to be answered or could not be answered. In the zoning bylaw amendment application form, the applicant indicated no, that they hadn't consulted with the neighboring property owners. In the applicant-initiated public hearing, the applicant was not present themselves and were represented by an employee and a consultant. We have heard many times about their intent to operate considerably and responsibly, but I would suggest that actions speak louder than words. Until council is provided with evidence that the owner of 4100 County Road 43 can successfully, respectfully, and in good faith to the character of the community, operate a resort and 220 banquet hall business, I would ask you not to approve the rezoning. Because to date, this resident and his family have seen nothing that would indicate that the applicant's intention is to be a good neighbor to an active, peaceful, and family-oriented community. Thank you for council's time.
Thank you. Councillor Strachan, do you need a pause? Or you just want some water? Okay, so we'll carry on. Next, who would like to address us?
Do you want to do the video? Okay. We'll do that one now.
And can you advise how long is the video, Ms. Preston? It's 6 minutes.
Yeah, it's pretty short. My name is Rob Hallman, and I live at 117 Maplestone Drive. I put together a little video with drone shots and some of my concerns. No real questions. Some of the questions are in the video itself. I don't expect an answer. It's just basically expressing my concerns through a narrated video. So without further ado, good evening. My name is Rob Hallman, and I live at 117 Maplestone Drive. I know there are many concerns that the residents of the Maplestone Lake subdivision have regarding the proposed rezoning for 4100 County Road 43. I wanted to talk about noise pollution. Noise pollution is defined as anything which interferes with, disrupts, or diminishes one's quality of life, and noise nuisance is used to describe an activity or condition that is harmful or annoying to others. Sound is a natural part of our surroundings, but when sounds become unwanted and loud, they can turn into noise pollution. Noise pollution can disrupt a natural ecosystem and cause a person's property to become unusable, unpleasant, undesirable, and devalued. Noise pollution can have negative impacts on human health, including loss of sleep and increased stress levels. A banquet hall with a DJ can hit decibel levels of between 100 and 110 at the source without any noise restrictions. That's just 10 to 20 decibels below the threshold of pain. The use of a decibel meter connected to a dedicated power source that cuts power once a predefined threshold is exceeded is an option. The big question is, What's an acceptable decibel level at the source so as to not disturb the residents of the Maplestone community who reside mere meters away? Generally, prolonged exposure to sound levels above 85 dB is considered damaging to human hearing. This is the reason why the most common maximum value allowed in wedding venues where dB restrictions are enforced is 85 dBs. Unfortunately, I believe even 85 dBs at the source will be disturbing to the residents of the Maplestone community who reside meters away. Adding more trees, a berm, a fence will reduce the noise level to a degree, but I personally don't feel it will reduce the noise levels enough so as to not disturb the residents of the Maplestone community. Light pollution, or artificial light at night, is the excessive or poor use of artificial outdoor light, and it disrupts the natural patterns of wildlife, contributes to the increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, obscures the stars in the night sky, and most importantly, disrupts human sleep. As you can well imagine, the large 100 vehicle parking lot and smaller 15 vehicle parking lot at 4100 County Road 43 will have bright parking lot lights on at all hours in the evening, as well as well past midnight when events are occurring. Without seriously aggressive noise and light restrictions being enforced, how much peacefulness do you think the residents of the Maplestone Lake subdivision will have with a banquet hall, recreational activity area, geodomes, and watercraft just meters away? In this shot, you can see that the banquet hall is just a few meters away from 301, 303, and 305 Moore Crescent. Don Stevenson, spokesperson for the D&G Landscaping, stated in an Inside Ottawa Valley news article dated March 26, 2024, that we're aware of the noise concerns and the plan is to plant more trees as a buffer. Does anyone here today believe that planting more trees will buffer the sound of a DJ blasting music at all hours of the day, evening, or into the wee hours of the morning? Or will more trees buffer the sounds of loud, intoxicated partygoers outside the banquet hall or geodomes having a smoke and animated conversations? This is a shot about 60 feet above the geodomes and just a few meters away from 307 and 309 Moore Crescent. As you can see, there is no privacy to be had. What appears to be a pathway and a few small, newly planted coniferous trees is just a few meters away from the property line. The noise and light coming from the banquet hall and parking lots, as well as the loud chatter of intoxicated partygoers and geodome renters, will deeply disturb these residents morning, noon, and night, and well past midnight. Adding more trees, a berm, or a fence will reduce the noise and light and loud chatter to a degree, but I personally don't believe it will reduce it enough so as to not disturb the residents of the Maplestone community. This is a shot of the entire Maplestone Lake subdivision in the top half of the image, as well as a 176-acre parcel of land that's for sale abutting the Maplestone Lake subdivision to the east. And the banquet hall, recreational area, and geodomes are shown in the bottom half of the image. How likely do you think houses will be built on those 8 empty lots if the potential buyers are aware that a commercial tourist business with a banquet hall, recreational area, and geodomes are mere meters away? How likely do you think existing residential homes will sell if the potential buyers are aware that a commercial tourist business with a banquet hall, recreational area, and geodomes are mere meters away? If this zoning amendment is approved, it would be setting a precedence, and there would be nothing stopping the owner of 4100 County Road 43, or anyone else for that matter, from purchasing these empty lots, severing them from the existing residential zoning, apply to change the zoning to commercial tourists, and then put geodomes or bed and breakfasts or other such commercial buildings on the empty lots. What would stop the owner of 4100 County Road 43, or anyone else for that matter, from purchasing the 176-acre parcel of land and applying to rezone it from MXP to commercial tourist for any uses defined in Section 23-C7-Tourist Commercial Zone-Non-Residential? This is a shot that shows all the current buildings at 4100 County Road 43 in relation to 303, 305, 307, and 309 Moore Crescent. This shot was taken about 30 feet above the backyard fire pit at 303 Moore Crescent. How likely do you think the residents of the Maplestone Lake subdivision will be able to enjoy a peaceful evening sitting around the fire pit, listening to nothing but the sound of crickets and the crackling of the fire logs? How likely do you think that an acceptable dB level of between 35 and 45 can be achieved from this vantage point? Adding more trees, a berm, or a fence will reduce the noise and allow intoxicated chatter to a degree, but as I suggested previously, I personally don't feel it will reduce the noise levels enough. This is a shot taken while walking my dog. This view here is in between 303 and 305 Moore Crescent, and this is right from the street. As you can see, the banquet hall is plainly visible from this vantage point right from the street. This is a shot of the storage barn. I personally believe the storage barn will be put to some sort of commercial use at some point in the future. There will also be a 100 vehicle parking lot with bright parking lot lights on at night surrounding this building. I'm sure you can well imagine the amount of light pollution coming from the parking lot in the evening and well past midnight. The plan shows a 15 vehicle parking lot between the 6 geodomes. I question the need for 15 parking spots, unless of course the intent is to build several more geodomes in the future. There's also a large dock to handle various types of watercraft like a pontoon boat or small motorboats or even jet skis. Here's a shot taken from the back of the property looking north and shows a road for vehicles being constructed that goes from the front to the back of the property. I could imagine constant traffic like ATVs or dirt bikes traveling up and down this road during the day and during the evening. This shot shows the south end of the lake near the back of the 4100 County Road 43 property. Currently right now there appears to be some ongoing pit activity from what I can see based on these construction vehicles, but who knows? Perhaps maybe this is the future site of additional geodomes or other commercial buildings. I'd like to thank the Council for allowing me to voice my concerns this evening. I also ask that Council make the right choice and deny the rezoning applications, or at the very least defer these applications until such a time as all questions have been answered and all concerns addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Others wishing to speak?
Hi, I'm Alicia Sabino, and I live at 309 Moore Crescent. Thank you for your time, and thank you everyone else for speaking on our community's behalf. Given time constraints and it's past my bedtime, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I did submit a written objection and subsequent information that goes a little bit more into the specific bylaws and the concerns that I do have with those, and I do hope that they are addressed. One of my biggest concerns is the lack of transparency that has occurred throughout the entire development of this tourist commercial area from the beginning of the minor variance in May 2021. And I urge you guys to consider perhaps involving the community a little bit more in the decision-making process. I do believe that a committee that involves the municipality, the developer, and the residents would be beneficial so that we could perhaps come to an agreement of what would be satisfactory on everyone's behalf. I imagine that with the amount of money that has already been invested into this development, that if this is passed, whether now or at a future date, with the decision process unbeknownst to me at this point, that the developer would likely object to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And as a community, as a delegation, we are also prepared to object to the Ontario Land Tribunal if we have to. So we would prefer to resolve it at this level rather than going up further. But I think that that would require a committee, time to have thorough discussions and address all of the issues and the bylaws in detail. which I don't think we have time to do tonight. So that's really all I have to say, and hopefully my written objection is addressed thoroughly in the follow-up staff report. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Strickland.
Thank you. Through Madam Mayor, I would encourage residents who do want to speak. It is 10 after 9. It is late by standards, but we do have time left in this meeting. Do not cut your time short. If you have the full 10 minutes, please use it. I don't think any of us are willing to simply say, we've only given you 2 minutes to talk and we'll walk away from this. So I think my council colleagues want to hear from everyone, and please use the time that you have available. I don't know if I can speak on behalf of council, but certainly my position is I'd like to hear from everybody tonight.
Certainly, there is no need to take less than 10 minutes, but if you feel that you don't have 10 minutes, that's okay too. We're going to carry on for as long as we have tonight. There is a municipal curfew imposed on council as part of our procedural bylaw. I believe that's 10:30 p.m. So we'll keep going for a bit longer and then take a bit of a pause and see where we're at. So I take Councillor Strickland's point, no need to preemptively cut yourselves off, but understand it is late for some of us and some of you, and you may wish for us to take a closer look at your written submissions, and we're happy to do that after the meeting. All right, please introduce yourself.
My name is Mike Fox. My wife and I live at 319 Moore Crescent. I have submitted my objections in writing, and so they've been seen by everybody involved, but a couple of points based on the presentations that were made tonight and a couple of questions. First of all, they refer to the pit license being surrendered. There are 2 pit licenses, so I don't know which one is being surrendered. It says the Class A, so that means there's still a Class B license that is active according to the MNR. To me, this whole, I guess, zoning and changes going forward is a little bit premature. If in fact the licenses are being surrendered, then we should be able to be supplied with a document that says the MNR is inspected and the sites are closed. I don't see that document. I see that they've been submitted, but I don't see that they've signed off on it. The next one was in the last photograph, you saw some pretty specific photographs that Rob had shown in the overhead with the drone. One of the things that's in that is a trailer that's parked off to the side of the domes. And it appears to be a little closer to the property line than the domes themselves. But I must say, appears to be a water and electrical hookup and a sewage hookup for that trailer. So is this a trailer park as well? I don't know. That isn't being mentioned in the proposed, but certainly if it becomes commercial, maybe there's more sites like that to be had on this property as well. I don't know. I can't comment to that. I can only comment on the one that's in the photograph that we can see. The next one was in reference to controlling the uses on the water. It was indicated here, and I've heard from a couple of people, that it was not within the ability of the municipality to restrict that use. I have since been given a legal opinion that indicated it is within your power should you choose. So you can restrict those uses with connection to the bylaw and the zoning. So you have the ability to do that. And I will be going back afterwards and having further conversations to get a further legal opinion. But that's what I was told by someone this afternoon. So those are the only points that I wanted to make other than what I've given you already in writing. Okay? Oh, I apologize. I have one more item.
Sure.
I just realized. There's been a reference both by the applicant and by the report that Amy Martin, to a berm that's supposed to be on the residential property. And supposedly that is in the planning document, or the subdivision agreement that was set out for the subdivision. I've read through that document. It was provided to me by Mr. Mosier. I don't see that in the plan. I don't see anything registered on title. I don't see anything about this no-go zone that has been referenced by both the applicant and planning. If there's a document out there that has this in it, it would be nice if it could be made available to us. Because so far, I can't find it. Okay?
Thank you. Ms. Martin and Mr. Mosher, do you want to take time now to respond to some of the inquiries and questions that have been asked? And then we'll obviously continue with public interventions.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we'll start with Mr. Fox's comments, and then we'll go back to a comment and question that was asked earlier. So in regards to the reference of a berm, that's demonstrated on the grading plan. So that's identified in the subdivision agreement, and that is public document, and we can circulate that through to you. Mr. Mosher, sorry? I believe that is correct.
Again, Mr. Fox, maybe let Ms. Martin finish, and then you can come down and provide a supplementary comment. I think that's probably best, so you're on the record. So Ms. Martin, just carry on, and we'll invite Mr. Fox down in a sec.
So the overall master grading plan for the subdivision is where it's identified. In regards to the no-touch zone, that's entrenched through the zoning for the Maplestone subdivision. So there's a site-specific rural residential exception zone, which on the zoning map shows an open space -1 exception, which establishes that no-touch zone in regards to creating that vegetative buffer, and there's to be no structures placed in that area or grading or alteration, and certainly staff can provide you with a copy of the zoning for the subdivision that outlines those provisions. So if I go back to my notes, just give me 2 seconds here. I did put a little star beside it in Mr. Johnston's comment in regard to the notice. So I do understand that in regards to the public open house that the applicant and their agent hosted, they sent out their own notice with wording. In regard to, and I'll just borrow Mr. Mosher's computer here, our notice that was circulated to the residents within 120 meters of the property and those that requested it, and which was posted on the property, states that this application is to amend the zoning on lands located at 4100 County Road 43 from rural special exception RU 63 and MXP to tourist commercial exception zone C7-6 to permit tourist commercial uses, including a banquet hall and short-term accommodations to be in use, and carry forward previous zone exceptions of the rural 63 zone and to formally cease pit operations. The lands at 4100 County Road 43 are also the subject of a concurrent application for an official plan amendment under the Planning Act, and a concurrent application for consent to sever is imminent.
Okay. Mr. Fox, I know you just wanted to provide a supplementary comment or question? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Yes, just in respect to the berm that everybody keeps talking about, the site grading has been completed to the plan. There's no berm that is missing. Everything that's been done has been approved and signed off on as per the site grading plans that were provided. Nobody has done anything. There's no structures on that property. The only thing that has happened back there is people have cut the grass. That's it. So there's nothing to be changed there from what's existing. And there's nothing in the subdivision agreement that mentions that zoning change. It is in the zoning bylaw, but there's no mention of the zoning bylaw on title or anywhere else with reference to that. There is an easement that is mentioned, and that is for drainage. And that's what most people assume that 15-meter zone at the back was for, because it's included in the zone in the drainage documents.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
We'll take another look at that. Appreciate that additional comment. And Ms. Dunlop would like to supplement.
Just for some clarity, that is in regard to the subdivision, not the zoning specific, but absolutely, we will make sure we get you a copy of that 15 meters because it is a combination, no touch, as well as the drainage. Absolutely all rural residential on the outer circle of Maplestone have a 15-meter drainage, also a no touch, and in some locations berms. But absolutely, we will make all those documents available. They're totally accessible for the public. So if you don't have them, if you had a problem getting them, please don't hesitate to reach out to either the planning department or the engineering department.
Great, thanks. All right, I know that we're almost 2 hours in, so we may take a 5-minute break, but if I could just get an indication of how many additional people wish to speak. Again, this is a public meeting, so we're in no way, in asking that question, I'm not limiting who may come forward. I'm just curious to know how many remaining individuals wish to speak. Okay, so currently just one, is that correct? I only see one hand. All right, well, what? Of course, and we will go back to the applicant, but we're still in the public portion of the meeting, so it's important that we hear from all members of the public wishing to speak. So I'll invite you to come down, individual who raised their hand. And should someone wish to speak after this intervention, you're more than welcome. We're still in the public meeting portion, so it's important that we hear from everyone who came tonight with an intention to speak and still wishes to do so. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Virginia Duty. I do not live in the neighborhood. I'm at 907 Town Line Road. But what happens in that neighborhood affects us all in the township. I'm concerned. I was at the last public meeting, and the first woman that spoke said, "How did we get here?" And there was much explanation at the first meeting that I went to last month that buildings were built for the enjoyment of the owner. They were going to just use them as for their own recreation. And then as time went on, people enjoying it said, gee, this would be a great site for a wedding venue or facility. And then speaking tonight to someone that had gone and visited the site and spoke to an employee, said that provisions had been 4 years in the making. And the owner commented that it was going to be a world-class facility. So I find it confusing how it has gone from a few buildings for the family enjoyment to a world-class facility in that amount of time. And I would just ask the council that you have an opportunity now to think long and hard how this affects the whole community. And I know optics were being thrown around at the first meeting, and it is a bit confusing how that line goes from one point to the other. And I just have concerns. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else at this stage wishing to return to the mic or address council who hasn't had the chance to do so? Okay, so then we are going to invite the applicant back for a supplementary comment, and council is free to ask any questions of certainly the applicant or staff who have made presentations this evening. So, all right, Mr. Clooney.
So there's been many conversations tonight about our initial intentions, and I can tell you that if our initial intention 4 years ago was to build a wedding facility or a banquet hall, it wouldn't be the shape that it is. It certainly wouldn't have the open concept kitchen that it has that we've used to entertain friends and family. It certainly wouldn't have been designed with a septic system that had a capacity to hold events for 100 people, when at the time we had the capacity to build a septic system to hold events for 225 people. We have extensive experience building restaurants. We built retirement residences. We built commercial construction. There are many construction features on that barn that are going to require us to do a change of use under Part 10 of the building code to change door swings, panic hardware, life safety items that weren't required of us when we built it as an accessory building. And we don't make costly mistakes like that, because at the time we could have easily done it to meet Part 3 of the building code and commercial standards. So I can tell you that we would not have built it like that if that was our intention. And, you know, if we go back to 5-6 years ago, we had a pit that was getting rapidly extracted. We had a home that had a series of tenants in it, and it was, by the end, inhabitable, and we had a dilapidated barn. If at that time we would have decided, let's apply for a rezoning, all the things we're currently before North Grenville with right now, if we would have applied for that and we would have received it and there was not one building on the site, the planning report of staff wouldn't have been any different. Our consultant's report wouldn't have been any different. We would have likely got the rezoning. There would have been possibly a little bit of public input on our site plan, but I believe our site plan is very nice and serves the purpose. And we would have simply applied for building permits to build the buildings, which we have now, but we would have applied for building permits, and we would have got those building permits. So however we got to where we are, we would have ended up here the same way if our initial plan was to approach this as a commercial venture, and it was not our intention to approach it as a commercial venture, because there's so many things we would have done differently had that been our intention from the outset. So I just want to clarify that this is not a sneaky thing that we've done here. In fact, would the public not consider this to be a very risky thing if that's what our intention was from day one? To render it not usable commercially because we didn't start with the planning process and the application. So that was not our intention. This happened organically, and it literally happened by people visiting the site, enjoying it so much, asking if they could rent it. We kept saying, no, you can't rent it. No, you can't rent it. And we just came to the point where we said, listen, we think this will be a great business for our 5 daughters to be involved in. My brother and I are getting construction fatigue, and we want to retire and slow down, and this is our little baby, and we think it's going to be a great family business, and we think it'll be fantastic for North Grenville, and we will operate it with care and respect for the neighbors. So I just want to say that. I wouldn't have, because it wasn't my intention 4 or 5 years ago. It wasn't. It wasn't our intention. On the way how? I don't know how to answer that, but I told you my position, so. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So certainly I think the applicant himself and his representatives are here in the room tonight. I'm just doing one last call before I close the public meeting. All right, if you're raising your hand, you have to come to the front and be on the public record. As council colleagues are aware, there's no recommendation to advance tonight. The purpose obviously was to hold the public meeting and hear from all relevant parties as well as members of the public. So that's what we're doing. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Sharon Fox. I'm at 319 Moore Crescent. I just have questions, and I don't know if I can do this.
You can certainly ask
It's
any
towards
question.
Mr. Clooney, so I won't look, so I'm talking here. But I just wondered if he did have any relationship with his neighbors, would he be willing to give anything? Would he be willing to not have motorized craft everything around the property and go for canoes, paddle boats, that type of thing? Would he consider, because they have a path that goes around the whole lake that apparently people are going to walk around it, would he consider just limiting that path to the far side that doesn't back onto the residents? So maybe if he came up with ideas to work with everybody, maybe we could all be happier. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Mr. Clooney, do you have anything else to add in terms of working with the residents on some of these concerns moving forward? Of course, we're in a very formal public meeting, which is our duty as a municipality, but certainly being a good neighbor on both sides. can be a complex and long-term endeavor. So perhaps you could speak a little bit to your appetite after this meeting to be in dialogue or stay in dialogue with residents and some of the concerns they flagged.
Well, we would agree to stay in dialogue, but really must be facilitated through staff because, you know, I don't think there's almost anything that we can say that could make them collectively happy. All we can do is try to operate responsibly. You know, there's some questions. Share your business plan. Oh, I mean, first, that's not our obligation, and you know, if they must know, we are hiring a facility manager that has extensive experience in operating banquet hall and event center. The Centurion Center that Tomlinsons operate in Ottawa is closing, and we have an opportunity to hire their general manager and much of their staff. So, you know, we don't intend to just take on this business with no prior experience and think we're going to be able to make it successful. We understand what we're good at and what we're not, and we plan to employ people that are experienced.
One of the big issues, of course, is noise, and your planner did refer to a noise attenuation expert who's with you this evening?
Yes.
Is that person here? Does that
Yes.
person just want to offer any supplementary comment on noise attenuation? Would that be valuable this evening? It is one of the areas where clearly our residents are expressing a lot of anxiety.
Yes, and that's great. We would ask him to come down and speak.
Okay.
One of the things that we really are planning to do, and our consultant, noise consultant, is going to help us procure this stuff. We are going to install some decibel meters along the property that upload to the cloud and notify us of any excessive noise, because unlike some other municipalities, North Grenville doesn't have a specific decibel cutoff. It's subjective. So the last thing that we want to get into is conversations with bylaw with somebody saying that, you know, it was so loud you couldn't hear her talk. We want to know if it is, and we want to be able to control it. We don't want to have bylaw infractions, but also we don't want to be in a debate on a Monday morning what the level of noise was on a Saturday night with bylaw. We want to have readings and understand. And while the neighbor might say it was a disturbance, the best we can do is then reference the decibel meter and say, in Ottawa, here's the standard. And we were far below it, or you know what, I'm really sorry. It was, and here's our mitigating measures going forward.
Okay, thank you.
So
if your noise attenuation expert could just introduce himself and speak a little bit to how he understands the process of reducing impact in terms of noise, perhaps that would be helpful for council. Certainly, I can recognize you as once we've heard from, for sure. Okay. Okay. Welcome, and if you could just say your name, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and fellow councillors. My name is Joshua Foster. I'm a professional engineer, and I am with Gradient Wind Engineering. I've been in land use planning in terms of environmental noise, and as well as building acoustics and some air quality stuff as well for about 15 years. So I'm quite versed on the subject of environmental noise. So first, I wanted to draw attention to there's what the province sort of governs in terms of, there's called the Environmental Noise Control Guidelines, NPC 300. These regulate generally noise, but it's related to both transportation noise from traffic roadways, as well as industrial sources of noise, such as HVAC equipment, generators, cooling towers, larger pieces of equipment. There's also more subjectively, so what's not covered under NPC 300 is covered through typical noise bylaws. So North Grenville has a noise bylaw, like City of Ottawa has a noise bylaw, and we'll speak to what we refer to people gathering and people speaking. So, restrictions on sirens and hollering and limits on, sound systems. So these are, and ringing of bells are all kind of unrestricted under these bylaws. So most of these bylaws don't actually have particular sound level limits, but MPC 300 has a limit of 50 and 45 for day and night. So that gives you an approximate feeling of what sort of generally acceptable level, although, I say noise bylaws don't have a control. Most of the sources, I would say, that are going to be operating on here, we've heard about, the music coming from the venue place, plus these geodesic domes, and people kind of gathering around the site. They don't fall under NPC 300, they would fall under noise bylaw. With regards to just the music venue, most of that noise is actually going to be, the sound is going to be inside the venue itself. So the building itself will attenuate the noise, plus there's the distance, and if those trees were to fill in, that would provide a buffer as well as for the noise. So I don't know if there's other questions.
When it comes to the transmission of sound outdoors or over water, which is one of the points that was raised earlier, are there efforts that can be undertaken to diminish how sound travels? I certainly take the point that over water, certainly voices can amplify. Motorized boat traffic could sound much louder than it actually is. So are there strategies one can put into place for things like that?
And so noise, if you double the distance, noise reduces by about 6 decibels. So because you express, as if you go further away from the source, that'll help attenuate noise. So if you're way down on the end of the lake hearing a motorboat, you're less likely to hear it if it's up towards the dock. The other thing is the type of landscape. The lake, it's hard water, so sound travels more over water than it does over, a forested area with lots of vegetation. In terms of what can be done, there's, again, the construction of the building to mitigate the noise, as well as, so adding trees, a thick forest about 30 meters deep. Obviously, I think there's going to be some, from the pictures I saw, there's got to be some thicker density in that forest. But once that forest fills in, that will provide some attenuation as well. And a good solid 30-meter depth of forest will provide a good decibel reduction.
Okay, thanks. Councilor Strachan?
Related to your point regarding the trees, I have it in my notes here that when you look at some of the imagery that we've seen down the lake side, you see some very thick, dense shrubbery of sorts. Whereas, on the built-up portion, they're thin, they're smaller trees that are going to lose their leaves and so on, and very young plants, trees that are planted. So perhaps as part of the consideration as you go through this process, one of the considerations that could be given would be to plant bigger trees, more mature trees that get you further down the line, and then you can have multiple meters growing at the same time. So I think you get further down that path quicker than if you're planting something slightly bigger than seedlings. So just a consideration, a point of note. Thank you.
We certainly have Ferguson Forest Nursery that hopefully would have trees of all sizes and ages. Okay, I do note that we do have a member of public who wishes to come back and raise some questions. So I'm going to take a last. Sure, that's fine. Come on down. I just want to, before I close the public meeting, and you're more than welcome to come and ask some questions. And of course, you're free to have an informal dialogue once we close the public meeting.
Sorry, it's Donna Stein again, 116 Maplestone.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, thank you, Kristen, you actually brought up the point I was going to bring, because there was a huge discrepancy, as you could see from the pictures that Mr. Clooney has supplied compared to the actual pictures, how it exists today. That wood tree chipper thing didn't stop last summer. And he will tell you it's from diseased or trees that had to come down. I kind of beg to differ, because if you go back to Google Earth, they look pretty healthy from a top view. So in terms of the trees being planted, they're this tall. That's not going to do anything. Also, I did ask at the public meeting about the STC rating on the building. I never got a response. That's a sound transmission class. So if this building was not built to be a banquet hall in the first place, it's not going to contain the sound. I also did ask Mr. Mosher about where else in the municipality this kind of zoning existed next to a residential. There isn't, except for Equinel, and their setbacks are a little different. It's a larger property, of course, it's a golf course, and that building was specifically built to house weddings, venue, that kind of thing. This was a steel structure that was added without us knowing, just went ahead. In terms of, it was not part of the public consultation. Was it disclosed? They added it after the fact, I believe, Alicia. After the public comments had closed, then they snuck in that extra building. So that's fine. The reality is, he could not answer how. We can all talk about decibels. I come from a neighborhood before where they used to hold a music festival. The decibels were within rating, and we could hear it 21 kilometers away. The city of Kitchener was astounded that their residents were hearing this that far, and it was within the means of the decibel range that they had allowed. So decibels are a great number on paper, but they don't mean anything when it comes to disturbing people in their neighborhood. That's reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I've just been reminded by the clerk that, of course, I will invite council colleagues to make any final comments. The clerk has reminded me there is a little bit of other business once we close this public meeting, but I will invite council colleagues to now ask any remaining questions they may have before I close the public meeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I would just like to share some of my comments and thank everyone who has submitted letters or the communal letter and come this evening to articulate very well your concerns and your worries. And I really appreciate your concerns and your worries because your home is your home. It's a big financial investment. It's where you live and raise your family and find comfort and peace. So that's really important to me and to all of us. So some of the comments I'd like to make, I don't know, I'm not in any way dismissing your worries or your concerns, but I would like to share with you some of my experience. And one of them is that I lived in Greeley. I had built 2 new homes in Greeley. One of them actually was right beside a public campground, Poplar Grove Campground. And there was never a problem living like within 500 meters or less from this public campground. It wasn't a problem at all. The second home that I had was also in Greeley. And in Greeley, there's a lot of mineral aggregate property around there. There's a lot. And quite a bit is active right now. If you see Greeley Sand and Gravel or Piper Sand and Gravel, they're coming from Greeley and they're bringing lots of stuff from there. So it's not uncommon that there are active pits and a lot of trucks, but there's also a lot of diminished pits that have now closed, they're exhausted, and they have been rehabilitated into lakes. And 30 years ago, when I lived in Greeley, Orchard View, I don't know if anyone is familiar with it, but Orchard View is a rural residential area with large lots. It looks very similar to where you live. And in the middle of Orchard View, they built an event center. And one of the abandoned pits is a lake. There's a little bridge over it. It's a lovely place for photographs, and a lot of weddings happen there. They also have an area in there that has different animals. There's deer, there's llama, there's alpacas, and so it's right in the middle of this residential subdivision. And that I have been to a number of weddings in that event center. and I've never heard a problem, and I lived in Greeley for 25 years. So there's a lot of hypothetical and imaginary concerns that many of you have, and I think that Mr. Clooney, I would hope, will really take into account everything he's heard this evening. And it is unfortunate that you feel that you didn't know more ahead of time. When I can see how things evolved, though, through the property, because when I look at those pictures tonight, I think, man, this could be like a Le Nordique spa out here. We could really have a fabulous place here. It looks great and has great potential for the municipality. So there's an event center in Equinel. You did mention that. Someone, I think Ms. Fox mentioned that. The issue of people drinking and driving, that's an OPP issue. That's a risk anywhere. We have bylaws here regarding noise. There's times when noise has to stop at a certain time. We have a dark sky policy. Every building, every site is going to have to pay attention to the dark skies. We do care about all of this stuff, and we do care about everything that you have said. When I look at the pictures that Mr. Clooney had and then the pictures that you had, there's a different season. Like, the trees all had leaves on them, the first one. Your pictures, the leaves were all gone. And I live right in Kempville here, and I'll tell you, I can hear trains in the wintertime. I can hear the train whistle and the trains, and I hear a lot of noise from 416, but that's because the leaves are gone. In the summer, it's way different. So perhaps Mr. Clooney could be encouraged to put more coniferous trees, larger trees, things that will absorb the sound more. Anyway, I'm not diminishing your concerns in any way. I appreciate that your homes are big investments and they're important to you, but I do think that things may not be as bad as you think they're going to be, and anyway, I want you to know that I hear you and I share your concerns, but I think it might not be as bad as you think.
So I think what we're going to, indeed, and I understand that this gentleman is registering disagreement, and I appreciate that. We're nearing the end of the public meeting. So at this stage, I just need to ask any other council colleague comments or questions for the applicant, for staff. I think, Steph, you've attempted to at least respond to the questions that were raised through the public at this stage. So I think what we're going to do is close the public meeting. This was strictly a public meeting tonight. We really wanted to better appreciate the perspectives of all of those who joined us this evening, and of course the applicant and the applicant's representative, in addition to staff. So appreciate we've been going for 2 hours and 15 minutes. I haven't given anyone a break, and we do have a little more business to complete. So I'll recognize Councillor Strachan, and then we'll Deputy Mayor, and then we will move on to the remaining item on our agenda, which is a notice motion. Councillor Strachan, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Director Martin, could you confirm what the next steps are? Because we're not rendering a decision tonight, so could you confirm where we go from here with all the public comments and so on, and what the I guess the next decision point is?
Thank you, through your worship, to Councillor Strachan. So this evening, no decision is being made. Staff have been taking note of the comments provided by the public, both orally tonight, as well what has been provided to us in writing. And again, you can still submit comments post-public meeting. We will be creating a supplemental report. We are still waiting on comments and finalization in regards to the peer review on the hydrogeological study, following up with the counties in regards to the traffic brief, and all of that will be provided in a supplemental report, as well as staff's final recommendation should council wish to adopt an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment, recommendations for what those could look like. Appreciating that those are not available this evening, staff wanted to hear public comment, because oftentimes through that process, we can look at some performance standards being built into an exception zone to address some of the comments. That will be available as part of that supplemental report. We do have, I would assume, all of your contact information, but if you have not reached out to us yet, I do encourage you to please do so, and we will notify members of the public when this matter is back on the agenda for consideration. Site plan control would be applicable should the zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment be adopted, and the appeal process be exhausted, whether we receive no appeals or if there is an appeal, it would go through the Ontario Land Tribunal. So from that perspective, more information is to come. We will ensure that the public is notified when that information is available and share it with them. And as mentioned, if you still have more comments post-meeting, we do encourage you to please circulate our planning@northgranville.on.ca email. Thank you.
And Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to add a brief comment that I've worked with this council for 5 years, and so I think I can speak for them when I say that we value and adhere to evidence-based decision-making. So we also encourage civic engagement. So these kinds of meetings are really important to us. We take our decisions, we make them very carefully. So I am encouraged that we'll have another opportunity to weigh in and review a supplementary report that the Planning Department intends to deliver. And before that time, again, we're open to further comments, and you can submit them to the Planning Department. And I hope that some sort of dialogue could happen with the applicant and that good things can come from it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So with that in mind, the public meeting is closed, and we are, okay, sorry, I apologize. I didn't see your hand. Go ahead. Oh, and we just need your mic. Thanks.
I was just wondering if this supplemental report would be available more than 2 business days in advance of any public consultation so that we have more time to review and provide any feedback or input or, get legal review if we feel that's necessary.
Maybe Ms. Preston, she's our clerk, and she can speak to those processes.
So our procedural bylaw actually stipulates at what point our council documents are provided to the public and to council. So as soon as the public receives them, that's the same time frame in which council receives them to consider. So you would have the same amount of time that council has to consider the documents, which is the Thursday prior to the meeting. So if that were the case, and our planning meetings are on Wednesdays, you would have more than 2 business days to review. They would go out at some point on Thursday. I do my best in an endeavor to get it out as soon as possible, but it is by end of business day on Thursday, so you would have all of Friday, all of Monday, all of Tuesday, and all of Wednesday before the meeting.
Thank you.
And I think with Ms. Martin doing the additional analysis, you will probably have a sense of which month this may return to council, so that there's at least a estimation for the applicant, of course, and council and members of the public of when you may be returning with that supplemental report. I'm assuming at this point we wouldn't see anything for at least until June. Is that a safe guesstimation, or is it too premature to do that now?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would say June, July is a bit of a timeline, but as noted, we will notify the residents as to when the matter will be put back on the agenda.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Can I close the public meeting now? Are we good? I'm not missing any hands? Okay, thank you. And I do thank everyone for their fulsome comments. It's never easy, but we are very pleased to be able to have received all the information from both the applicant and from members of the public. And I'm now going to move on, I think, to our notice of motion. Can you just Help me, Ms. Preston, I've lost track.
We just have the required
Indeed.
for this public meeting.
All right, so proceeding further, we've held the public meeting, Ms. Preston, for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment. Are you asking that we confirm that we held the public meeting? Okay.
For the record, yes.
For the record, can I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillors Wilson and Sarkian. And this is a motion that confirms that council held a public meeting for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, official plan amendment for 4100 County Road 43. I think we're all in agreement. We had a public meeting. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, great. Okay. Next, we are going to consider Councillor Barclay's notice of motion. And I'll ask Deputy Mayor Barclay to speak specifically to that notice of motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the interest of time and approaching curfew, can I simply read the notice of motion and we discuss it at a later date?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So following is my notice of motion. That council direct the director, of Parks and Recreation and Culture to report back to council in the month of May on the budgetary implications and timelines associated with a request for proposal to complete a comprehensive community consultation related to the structural review of the former Township Hall in Oxford Mills and its potential future uses as a public facility. Thank you.
Great. And you're providing notice of motion, but suggesting that we can bring this proposed motion back to council next week for consideration.
Yeah, in consideration of the time. Thanks.
Sure. Okay, council colleagues, good? All right. Then we'll carry on then. And this is, we're at our confirmatory bylaw, and that is that bylaw 3024 to confirm proceedings of council at its regular meeting held on April 10th, 2024 be adopted and passed. Mover and seconder, please. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sullivan, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to call the question on confirmatory bylaw. Thank you. And then finally, adjournment at 9:55. See, we didn't do so bad after all. I'll look for a mover seconder for adjournment. Strachan, please. O'Sullivan, please. Thank you. I'm calling the question on adjournment. All in favor? Are you opposing? Oh, I do. Oh, my gosh. I did thank you, Councillor Barclay. Before adjourning, I did want to recognize that Jill Sturdy is leaving the municipality at the end of this week to take on a very exciting opportunity with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And Jill joined us in 2019, so she's almost been with us for 5 years and has given an extraordinary amount of time and energy and brought a lot of heart and energy and enthusiasm and has been well embraced by many different members of the community as well as staff and council, and we want to formally thank her so much for all she has done over the last 5 years and wish her well in her new endeavors. I know they're exciting, and Jill came from the conservation world. She, without a millisecond of hesitation, threw herself into one of our main priorities, which was the County Road 43 expansion. Didn't flinch, really helped to advocate for trees and better lighting and multi-use pathways, and merged some of her conservation interests with the best interests of North Grenville, and has done so many other things on behalf of the community in the meantime. So we wish Jill all the best, and thank you, Deputy Mayor, for that reminder. And with that, I'll call the vote on adjournment at now 9:57. Thank you.